I'm leveling up my stats and Marvel. Greetings, fellow multiversal adventurers. It's an honor to have you back in this saga that has us all hooked. Official channel statement: this story is 100% epic fiction, so please don't attempt real magic. The results aren't guaranteed and insurance won't cover it. The rights to this masterpiece belong entirely to its brilliant original author. We are just a barge sharing it with you. Do you want to keep being part of this amazing community? Join our ninja army of subscribers on YouTube and give this content a like. And for true fans, our Patreon has exclusive ninjutsu waiting for you. Chapter 76, Making Empty Promises to Wanda. Wanda, is there something you need? Although he couldn't see her face due to the limited visibility, Russell recognized her immediately. Oh, wait. Should I call you Master Wanda? I don't spend much time in Kamartaj, so I often forget about this. Please forgive me. In Kamartaj, people usually address each other as Master so-and-so, rarely by their first name. Only Russell, so ignorant, often makes this mistake. It's alright, Master Russell, just call me Wanda. Wanda shook her head, unconcerned about the form of address. Then you can just call me Russell, Russell said casually, reclining in his rocking chair. As he spoke, Russell drew a circle with his hand, opening a portal to the 7th floor of the bookstore, from which he retrieved a rocking chair. He placed it aside, gesturing for Wanda to sit down and talk. Let's sit down and talk. Standing is tiring. Russell didn't get up. Because of his memories from before his transmigration, he subconsciously treated Wanda as an acquaintance. Plus, with his increased power, he'd become more casual in his speech and actions, forgetting that this was only their second meeting. Wanda obediently sat in the rocking chair, mimicking Russell's posture. Although Russell acted somewhat familiar, she didn't mind. Wanda turned her head to look at Russell. Russell, thank you for saving me and Pietro last time. Russell hummed in response. Seeing no reaction from Russell, Wanda continued, Russell, I want to ask you a few questions. Russell closed his eyes, feigning sleep, his tone languid. Go ahead. Why do you know about my and Pietro's childhood? Why did you save us? Wanda cut to the chase, directly asking these two questions that had troubled her for a long time. Did the Ancient One explain to you? I saw your talent and wanted you to succeed me as the Sorcerer Supreme. Russell remained lying down, offering a casual explanation. Wanda pressed, but that doesn't explain why you know about us, the Time Stone. The holder of the Time Stone can know the past, present, and future. Russell launched into his charade. In one of the futures, I saw you as a powerful sorcerer. That's why I paid attention. The real reason, of course, was that Russell knew what had happened on Earth 199,999 and was aware of Wanda's potential. But he didn't want to say that. It would involve more complex issues and be difficult to explain. Is that really true? Wanda's voice was hesitant. She felt something was off. But isn't the Time Stone with the Ancient One kept by her? I have one too. Russell flipped his hand, taking out the Time Stone. Wanda's gaze was drawn to the Time Stone, staring at it for a long time, unable to look away. Want to play? If you want to play, take it. Russell casually tossed the Time Stone to Wanda. Seeing her fumble to catch it, Russell warned, this Time Stone is a fake. It won't activate its power unless you actively input energy into it. But if it were the real Time Stone, be careful not to touch it directly with your body. Wanda gently pinched the Time Stone, examining it closely. Suddenly, Wanda asked, Russell, can I use this Time Stone to reverse time and resurrect my parents? Her voice was filled with anticipation and trepidation. No, Russell replied directly. Why? Wanda asked excitedly. Russell explained, your parents' souls have most likely already left this universe and entered the Hell Dimension. The Time Stone's power is limited to a single universe. It cannot bring things from the Hell Dimension back to the real universe. Wanda's expression darkened. The more hopeful she had been, the more disappointed she was now. However, there is a way to resurrect your parents. Russell decided to paint a rosy picture for Wanda, a member of his Sorcerer Supreme Order, to motivate her to study magic diligently and seamlessly transition into the role of Sorcerer Supreme. If you're powerful enough, you can go into hell and retrieve your parents' souls, Russell added after a moment's thought. I retrieved the souls of Tony's parents, and Matt's soul, Tony Stark. Wanda's expression turned strange at the mention of that name. Russell was also puzzled. Why wasn't there hatred on Wanda's face? Don't you and Pietro hate him? He designed the Stark missiles that destroyed your home and killed your parents. Russell, How do you even know that? Wanda asked, puzzled, before explaining. That was true before, but we've explained it clearly. He was the designer of the missiles, but he wasn't responsible for their sales, nor was he the one who launched them. The reason Stark Industries missiles fell into the hands of terrorists was because someone within the company betrayed him and secretly smuggled them. He also apologized to me and Pietro in the end. That's it, Russell asked curiously. What else? Wanda countered. Russell sensed that the explanation wasn't so simple. But since Wanda hadn't elaborated, Russell didn't press further. It was fine as long as the members of the Sorcerer Supreme were a loving family. Russell, you just said you retrieved Tony's parents and Matt's souls from hell. But why aren't they resurrected? Wanda steered the conversation back on track. She now only wanted to know how to resurrect her parents. Yet, Russell, why isn't Matt fully resurrected? He can only act as a soul. Eileen and Matt had arrived and joined the conversation. Russell first took out 2 more rocking chairs, then explained, because of the physical body. The soul and body are strongly connected. Not just any physical body can perfectly match the soul. If the body and soul are not in harmony, not only will it not nourish the soul, but it will also harm it. After explaining, Russell greeted Matt. Both looked somewhat embarrassed. Russell spoke first, apologizing, sorry, Matt. I didn't expect this to cause you to lose your physical body and almost die. Matt smiled, unconcerned, and said, it's okay, buddy. It's my fault for being too careless and not pressing the pager you gave me in time to call for help. My soul is fine now, I can see again. Matt smiled apologetically and continued, I haven't thanked you yet for risking your life to save my soul. In Matt's mind, it was because he was careless and instantly killed, failing to press the pager for help, that Russell had to venture into hell and risk his life to save his soul. He'd heard from Eileen that Russell didn't return for almost 3 days after leaving. When he returned, his aura was a bit off, quite frightening. Risked your life. Russell's expression was strange, guessing that Matt seemed to have misunderstood something. It's okay, buddy, a mere primordial demon, a former ruler of hell, nothing to mention. Russell, how do you obtain a physical body that matches your soul? Wanda interrupted Russell and Matt's conversation, pressing for an answer. Hearing this, Matt also looked at Russell. Although he said it was fine, how could this soul state, unable to contact a physical body or communicate with ordinary people, possibly be good? 2 methods, scientific cloning technology and magical reality manipulation. Russell didn't keep them in suspense, giving the answer directly. Cloning. Everyone's attention was drawn to this familiar term. Wanda asked doubtfully, then why didn't Tony Stark clone his parents' bodies? Russell shrugged, who knows? Maybe he tried and found other problems. Cloning technology is very complex. However, I do know where to find mature cloning technology, and I'm currently looking for them. Who? The heirs, a family in the multiverse. The heirs? What kind of family is that? Eileen asked doubtfully. As for the multiverse, she had gained a basic understanding of it after spending several days in Kamartaj. Does it matter? Russell countered. Eileen was speechless. Matt asked worriedly, Russell, won't this heir's family be difficult to deal with? Judging from Russell's tone, he knew that it wasn't something that could be easily obtained through negotiation. Russell was most likely planning to forcibly seize it. Matt didn't want to drag Russell into facing a powerful force spanning the multiverse because of himself. Don't worry, I'm 98% confident. Russell smiled confidently. Their strength lies in absorbing life energy. Coincidentally, my strength is also absorbing energy. I have a natural advantage over them. As they talked, a portal sparkling with fire opened. The Ancient One stepped out. Wanda, Matt, and Eileen, the Ancient One, Russell, the Ancient One. Ancient One smiled and nodded, responding to each of the greetings. Sorcerer, aren't Thor and Loki coming back with you? Russell asked. Although he hadn't greeted the brothers Thor and Loki on Sakura Island, it didn't mean Russell hadn't seen them. They stayed at SHIELD, receiving hospitality. Ancient One replied with a smile. SHIELD, Space Carrier. Director Fury, the Council has decided that SHIELD will be changed from a combat force to a rescue force. Until the Council's combined fleet arrives, no destruction of the battle site is permitted, nor is salvage of the wreckage of Takamagatora or the Night Kingdom allowed. Yes, Director Alexander. Nick Fury disconnected, his face grim, but he still had to relay the order. A moment later, the space carrier was decommissioned. Nick Fury sighed deeply in the command room. He piloted the space carrier, laden with weapons, leading a fully armed Avengers team. Proud and spirited, he wanted to make a name for himself in the battle between Kamar-Taj and the Sakura Island Pantheon. Unexpectedly, not a single shot was fired, not a single cannon shot was fired. The war ended. His space carrier and its crew were reorganized from a combat formation into a rescue formation. As for salvaging the wreckage of Takamagatora and the Night Kingdom after the Russells' conquest, such a good thing was certainly not for SHIELD. Chapter 77 The Unbreakable Dimensional Barrier. SHIELD, officially the Homeland Security and Logistics Agency, is a special forces unit of the International Security Council dedicated to handling various unusual incidents. Nominally, it is directly under the Council, backed by the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, and possesses law enforcement authority worldwide. In reality, however, it is primarily controlled by the United States, and its law enforcement authority cannot supersede the sovereignty of the other 4 permanent members. Within the United States, SHIELD is essentially an adopted son. When it comes to scapegoating, SHIELD is the only choice. When it comes to sharing the spoils, they're kept at arm's length. Nick Fury, however, remains unfazed. By chance, SHIELD has gained an unexpected advantage. Inside the lounge of the space helicopter, 3 groups are seated facing different directions, snacking, drinking, and chatting. On SHIELD's side, Senior Agent Coulson and Commander Hill. On the Avengers side, Iron Man Tony Stark, Hulk Dr. Banner, Black Widow Natasha, Hawkeye Clinton, and Blade Eric. On the Asgardian side, Thor and Loki. Coulson's gaze lingered on Thor and Loki, still somewhat incredulous. The 2 apprentice sorcerers he'd seen at Kamar-Taj a while back were actually Thor, the god of thunder, and Loki, the god of mischief, from the Norse pantheon, not just a coincidence of names. After a moment's hesitation, Coulson asked tentatively, Thor, Loki. Are you Thor and Loki, the gods of thunder and mischief, respectively? From Norse mythology, Thor put down his snacks, wiped his mouth, and flashed his signature sunny, approachable smile. Absolutely. So, you're also gods of earth, belonging to the Norse pantheon? Natasha asked. She knew the answer to this question. Compared to the relatively unknown Japanese pantheon, the Norse pantheon was far more famous. Loki chuckled and shook his head, saying, we are gods in Norse mythology, but not gods of earth. Or rather, there has never been a Norse pantheon, only the gods of Asgard. Asgard? Isn't that the realm of the Aesir and Vanir gods in Norse mythology? Natasha asked. Mythology comes from us, not the other way around. Loki's tone was arrogant, but it perfectly explained Natasha's question. Thor added, the Asgardians are the Aesir gods in Norse mythology. Asgard is the home of the Asgardians. 1,000 years ago, the Asgardians and Midgards joined forces to fight the frost giants of Jotunheim in Norway. Afterward, the Asgardians visited Norway many times. Gradually, the story of Asgard formed a mythology there. Although Thor explained Natasha's question, the group became even more confused. Thor, could you tell us in detail what Asgard, Midgard, and Jotunheim are all about? After a moment of contemplation, Thor slowly explained, this involves a concept first, the 9 realms. The world tree connects 9 regions in the universe, collectively known as the 9 realms. Asgard, Midgard, and Jotunheim are all among the 9 realms. Asgard is the guardian of the 9 realms. Midgard, also known as Midlegard, is your earth. Jotunheim is the world of giants. The frost giants are one branch of the giants, guardians of the 9 realms. Hearing this title, everyone's eyes flickered. Guardians, in other words, rulers. Natasha then asked, since there are 9 realms, what are the other 6? Thor continued, the other 6 are, Vanaheim, the abode of the Vanir gods, Nidweel, the world of the dwarves, Alfheim, the abode of the light spirits, Watheim, the abode of the dark elves, Helena, the abode of the dead, and Muspelheim, the abode of the fire demons. Coulson asked, then, Thor, Loki, why are you in Kamar-Taj? And dressed as apprentice sorcerers? Shouldn't you be in Asgard? Thor continued, Loki and I were sent by our father to Kamar-Taj to learn magic. Coulson pondered. Father? It seems quite different from Norse mythology. In Asgard, Loki is Odin's son, not his brother, and Kamar-Taj is extremely influential beyond Earth, in the 9 realms, and maintains good relations with Asgard. But that's normal. After all, It's a group of sorcerers who possess the magic to travel between different universes. The Mariana Trench is known as the fourth pole of Earth. It is one of the harshest environments on Earth, with its deepest point reaching approximately 11,000 meters. At this moment, countless underwater robots and various equipment were transported to the Mariana Trench to salvage the remains of Takamagahara and the Night Kingdom. Although Russell's high-energy pulse cannon pierced through these two-dimensional spaces and caused them to explode, the explosions did not completely destroy everything within those dimensional spaces. In the eyes of various countries, primarily the five great powers, Takamagahara and the Night Kingdom are products of magic, or a combination of magic and technology, and are of great research value. Although their remains were of much less value, they still had research value and were worth the effort to salvage. Suddenly, a salvage team discovered something unusual. Various objects floating in the water were bounced away when they approached a certain spot. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that the water flow could not pass through that spot at all. Activate the grappling hook to test it, the team leader decisively ordered. Bang! A muffled sound, and as expected, the grappling hook was bounced back. Report the news, the team leader said excitedly. This was a special discovery, worthy of commendation. Soon, the news reached the on-site command center. The command center issued the instruction, detect the specific range and conduct energy detection. After some detection, the data was compiled and submitted. Reporting, sir, the barrier range and energy waveform are very similar to the dimensional barriers of Takamagahara and the Land of Night, Izumo. This must be Izumo. At the command center, a staff officer who had just finished cramming on the Sakura Pantheon suddenly exclaimed. In the Sakura Pantheon, there are three main gods. The sorcerer of Kamartaj killed the god Takeuchi Susanoo no Mikado, one of the three Olympian gods, above the capital of Sakura Kingdom. However, because Takeuchi Susanoo no Mikado died outside, his divine kingdom remained intact, untouched by the attack, and the facts were almost identical to the commander's guess. Takeuchi Susanoo no Mikado and most of his subordinate gods were receiving worship from the people of Sakura Kingdom at a shrine in the capital. The attack was sudden. Almost all of them were killed by Russell's massive meteorite. The remaining minor figures hid in Izumo Kingdom, too afraid to move. Russell ignored them. Hearing the advisor's words, the eyes of everyone in the command room lit up. Two shattered divine kingdoms and one intact divine kingdom, the choice was obvious. Evacuate the salvage team near the barrier and prepare for the attack. With a command issued from the command center, the salvage team near the gateway to Izumo was quickly cleared. However, to the commander's dismay, weapons against underwater targets were far less effective than those against land targets. Many weapons of mass destruction were not originally designed for underwater targets, but rather for land targets. Faced with Izumo's dimensional barrier, torpedoes, mines, and deep-sea bombs all failed. In response, someone suggested a clumsy method. Why don't we transport the explosives there and detonate them remotely? After all, it's just a targeted explosion. No need for such complexity. Okay, first, a missile with the equivalent of 10,000 tons of TNT. Boom. A massive explosion, yet the Izumo Kingdom's dimensional barrier remained intact. Then, a missile with the equivalent of 100,000 tons of TNT. Boom. An even more massive explosion, yet the Izumo Kingdom's dimensional barrier remained intact. Millions of tons, tens of millions of tons. The salvage teams near the Mariana Trench have all withdrawn, including the command fleet, which has moved far away from that area. Should we increase the yield further? If we continue to increase the yield, it could trigger a tsunami that sweeps across the surrounding coastlines. A sense of frustration spread through the command center. Larger yield hydrogen bombs could certainly be manufactured. But a hydrogen bomb with a yield of 10 million tons of TNT would create a fireball with a terrifying diameter of 5 kilometers and a mushroom cloud height of over 20 kilometers. The shockwave would shake the sea, creating towering waves. Even the massive glacier where Sakura Island was located, 200 kilometers away, was affected. Even so, the dimensional barrier of Izumo remained unbroken. Whether increasing the yield further would breach the dimensional barrier was uncertain. The damage and economic losses would be incalculable. On the SHIELD space carrier, the crew who felt the shockwaves of the explosion had already gathered on the deck. Insane, even Tony, a weapons designer by training, was shocked by the ever-increasing yields of the hydrogen bombs. Turning to Nick Fury, Tony asked, "Any news? What did the council discover?" Why are they suddenly acting like this? Nick Fury replied in a deep voice, a divine realm, an unconquered, perfectly intact divine kingdom, there's another one. Tony was initially surprised, then understood. Not surprising, the Sakura pantheon originally had three main gods. Look, Thor suddenly pointed ahead. There haven't been any new explosions for a long time. Are they giving up? After gazing at the direction of Izumo for a long time, Nick Fury guessed, probably. Hearing this, Thor was eager to try. Then do you mind if I give it a shot? He wanted to try attacking the dimensional barrier of Izumo and see the difference between him and Russell. Hearing this, the others looked at Thor with surprise in their eyes. Even a hydrogen bomb with tens of millions of TNT equivalent couldn't break through the dimensional barrier of Izumo. Could this Asgardian Thor do it? After a long silence, Nick Fury said, I need to ask for permission. A moment later, the request was approved. Thor reached out, and Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, hurtled through the air. He changed out of the plain white robes of a Kamartaj apprentice sorcerer into the battle robes of the Asgardian Thor. Holding Mjolnir, Thor leaped from the space carrier. Chapter 78 Thor's Final Judgment. With the force of a thunderbolt, Thor, like a bolt of silver lightning, ripped through the sky. Boom! A massive wave erupted as Thor plunged into the sea, landing on the dimensional barrier of Izumo. Thor raised Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, his arm muscles bulging. Boom! The first strike caused the sky to change color. A bolt of lightning descended from the heavens, striking the dimensional barrier. The barrier remained unmoved. The lightning dissipated, spreading for dozens of miles. Seeing this, Thor showed no disappointment. Instead, a smile spread across his face. With a roar, his divine power erupted. Divine power mingled with the lightning, converging on Mjolnir in his hand. He raised Mjolnir high, then brought it down heavily. Boom! The second strike brought lightning and thunder. Countless bolts of lightning appeared in the sky. As they fell, they converged, entering Mjolnir and striking the dimensional barrier. The dimensional barrier trembled violently. A crack appeared and disappeared. Before the cracks could heal, Thor brought his hammer down with a deafening roar. Boom! Boom! The third hammer strike, a lightning turbulation descended. Huge bolts of lightning, like dragons, accompanied Mjolnir's descent, striking the dimensional barrier. Crack! Crack! The dimensional barrier cracked further. Then, it shattered. The last divine kingdom of the Sakura pantheon was revealed to the world. Thor paid little attention to this ocean kingdom within the Sakura pantheon. He turned, lifted Mjolnir, and flew towards the space carrier. Only the 100-meter-high circular wave beneath his feet spread outwards. It's broken. With just 3 hammer strikes, the dimensional barrier of Izumo has been shattered. On the space carrier, everyone was shaken, staring at Thor flying up from below, unable to recover for a long time. At this moment, they understood why Asgard dared to call itself the Guardian of the Nine Realms. And the Sakura Island Pantheon, suppressed by Kamartaj, only dared to engage in underhanded schemes. After the incident, facing Russell, they cowered within the dimensional barrier, too afraid to move. The only one brave enough to charge, the sea god Susanoo, was also killed by Russell's single kick. Pantheons are not the same. Gods are not the same. Thor truly deserves the name of the god of thunder. While both Thor and Russell shattered dimensional barriers, Thor's 3-hammer strike was far more visually striking than Russell's long-range electromagnetic pulse cannon attack. Thor's bravery surpasses even that of the sorcerer Russell, someone murmured on the deck. Hearing this, Loki was displeased. Loki sneered and softly rebuked, ignorant. Everyone looked at Loki with confusion and dissatisfaction. Although they hadn't said it themselves, those words had expressed their thoughts. Seeing everyone's gaze focused on him, Loki explained, didn't your instruments measure the energy intensity? Russell's attack clearly increased energy intensity gradually. It shattered the dimensional barrier between Takamagahara and the Land of Night before it even reached its limit. Thor's attack, however, had a step-like energy intensity. The second and third attacks had similar energy intensities, indicating that it had reached its limit. Although Thor and Loki were brothers, Thor was a warrior, and Russell was a sorcerer. When out on the world, a sorcerer should help another sorcerer. It wasn't that he was annoyed by Thor's show-off. Nick Fury turned and ordered his agents, go to the technical department and retrieve the energy calculation records. He believed the data wouldn't lie. They're really going to retrieve the data, Loki thought, a sudden panic. What he had just said was correct, but selective. Comparing energy sustainability and stability, Russell's high-energy pulse cannon was naturally superior, but comparing peak energy, Thor's third strike had already surpassed Russell's high-energy pulse cannon. After all, Russell needed to restrain himself to avoid accidentally shattering the Earth. Thor didn't need to, he was driven by a competitive spirit, unleashing his full power. No need, Thor flew down to the deck just then, stopping Nick Fury from pulling up the data for comparison. Russell's strength is indeed greater than mine. I was fighting in Jotunheim and got into trouble. Russell arrived to the rescue and easily got out of trouble. And with a variation of his spell, he forced Laufey, the Frost Giant King, to submit. According to my father Odin, if he used that spell at full power, he could shatter Jotunheim. And I am far from being able to do that. After hearing Thor's explanation, everyone exclaimed in surprise, "Shatter Jotunheim?" After a moment of silence, someone still asked a question. "Then can Russell also shatter the Earth?" Thor nodded. "Theoretically, yes," everyone gasped. It really was a gasp. After all, Russell had frozen the entire ocean earlier. So, did the entire Earth just have a brush with death? Thor shook his head and smiled. "Don't worry. Loki is right. Russell was obviously intentionally controlling the power of his attack." After calming them down, Thor suggested, "Let's go back to the lounge and have a drink." Thor was delighted to have successfully breached the dimensional barrier of Izumo. Along the way, SHIELD agents all stared at him. This exceptionally brave Asgardian Thor had left a deep impression on them. Thor responded to each of them with a beaming smile. On the sea, the 5 rogue fleets displayed their unique abilities, weathering the impact of 100-meter-high waves. Then, they all headed towards Izumo. Thor didn't care what lay within Izumo, he was simply leaving after breaking the dimensional barrier. They, however, did care. Within Izumo, the guards and servants who had previously worshipped the sea god Susanoo were about to face a massacre. In fact, the power of technology was no less than that of magic. Ordinary technological weapons were perfectly capable of dealing with ordinary magic. As for portals, mirror spaces, and the time stone, these did not belong to ordinary magic, but to advanced magic. Portal spells seemed simple, but were actually not complicated at all. The prerequisite was the presence of a slingshot. Similarly, there were advanced technologies that corresponded to advanced magic. Earth 199,999 can speak for this. Getting back to the point. In the Izumo Kingdom's dimensional portal, guards in attendance stood in neat rows. One hand held an energy shield, the other various energy weapons, ready for battle. Fleets from various countries lingered at the entrance to Izumo, seemingly forced to hesitate to enter. Has the higher-ups decided how to attack? We need to wait a bit longer. We need to examine the remains of Takamagahara and the Land of Night to determine what level of firepower to use without causing too much damage. As you know, the things inside are of great research value. After a long while, the results are in. Conventional weapons can be used. Good. The commander disconnected from headquarters and looked at the Izumo Kingdom's dimensional portal on the screen. Fire, fire, fire. First time publishing. A bit excited. Writing isn't in great form. This chapter is only 2,000 words. Well, this chapter counts as yesterday's. Today's guaranteed 6,000 words won't be less. Chapter 79 Russell. Oh no, I've become a god among men. Inside the dimensional portal of Izumo Kingdom, guards and divine servants stood ready, prepared for close combat. According to their records, once the dimensional barrier was broken, the enemy would quickly storm in through the portal. If they held the portal, they had a chance to hold out until the barrier reopened. To the guards and divine servants' surprise, no enemy appeared within the dimensional portal for a long time. Whoosh! 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 The sound of air being torn apart came from above the guards. They looked up blankly, finding nothing. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light illuminated everything, obscuring their vision. Then, flames and shockwaves swept in. Boom! 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 3 consecutive booming sounds ripped through the air. The guards and divine servants within the Izumo Kingdom's dimensional portal were torn apart before they could react. The guards and divine servants of Izumo Kingdom, along with a few lesser gods who were lucky enough to survive. Their understanding of mortals was still stuck 1,000 years in the past. But times had changed. On the front lines, the speed and destructive power of missiles far surpassed ordinary magic, something no individual magical shield could withstand. If the Izumo guards and divine servants hid and fought in urban warfare, they might have a chance to resist. but arrayed in the dimensional portal to meet the enemy, they were nothing short of sitting ducks. Seeing the remaining armed forces of Izumo easily destroyed, the people in the command rooms of the various warships finally breathed a sigh of relief. Even the soldiers below breathed a sigh of relief. First, Russell single-handedly destroyed cities and islands, conquering Takamagatora and the Land of Night. Then Thor, drawing upon lightning, shattered Izumo with 3 hammer blows. This put immense pressure on the various nations. It should be noted that Izumo's dimensional barrier was impenetrable even by hydrogen bombs with the equivalent of 10 million tons of TNT. Now, the easy annihilation of Izumo's living forces proved that gods and their followers, while possessing individual abilities far exceeding those of ordinary people, were still merely mortal beings. Russell and Thor's combat prowess is an extremely rare exception, not representative of the general population. Special forces are preparing to land in Izumo. Caution, proceed with caution. In the American Command Center, a high-ranking officer looked at the message on the screen. A strange expression flashed across his face. The chieftain really misjudged it back then, thinking it was an ordinary life-bearing planet. Unexpectedly, while the technology on this planet is quite ordinary, its supernatural power is extremely strong. After returning, we must inform the chieftain to postpone the secret invasion. At least, we need to investigate the distribution of supernatural power on this planet first. Having made up his mind, the officer's expression returned to normal. The Avengers and the brothers Thor and Loki had already left the SHIELD space carrier and gone to Tony's mansion in New York for a celebratory party. Coulson, representing SHIELD, also attended. A hot topic at the party was magic and spells. Loki, the greatest sorcerer of the 9 realms, excluding Kamartaj, was explaining to everyone, magic is a means of utilizing specific cosmic energy and extra-dimensional energy. Its essence transcends all known science. Loki began with a grand pronouncement. The sources of magic are mainly 4, personal energy, specific cosmic energy, extra-dimensional energy, and magical objects. Their specific differences lie in. Russell, mixed among the ordinary guests, watched Loki speak eloquently and confidently, displaying the demeanor of the master sorcerer, and was somewhat surprised. Was this still the melancholy and gloomy little prince of Asgard? Russell moved closer to Thor, nudged him, and whispered, "Hey, Thor. What's wrong with Loki?" Thor turned, saw Russell, and smiled, replying, "Loki's probably made a lot of friends here. He's always been a loner in Asgard, is that so?" Russell mused. It seemed Loki's progress bar had suddenly increased significantly. After greeting Thor and drinking 2 glasses of coconut water, Russell went to find Tony. He had important business to attend to this time and wouldn't waste time getting Thor drunk. Without even looking, Russell spotted Tony. Tony's location was always so conspicuous. On the outermost edge, Happy and Pepper stood helplessly. Inside, a group of beautiful women. Russell couldn't see the one furthest inside, but without a doubt, it was Tony. Russell sighed, rubbing his forehead. Although he had resolved to indulge in pleasure, he wasn't interested in this kind of situation. Perhaps Russell's movements were too conspicuous. Or perhaps Coulson had already memorized everything about Russell, including his physique and demeanor. In any case, Coulson, who was also at the party, noticed Russell. "Russell, you're here too." Coulson walked over and greeted Russell. "Are you free, Russell? SHIELD has a few questions about the hand and would like to ask for your opinion." "The hand?" "Sure." Russell's expression was a little strange. "I'm here today also because of the hand." Hearing Russell's words, Coulson's expression tightened. SHIELD didn't actually want to hand over that item. It was just that Russell's destructive power was too terrifying. SHIELD didn't dare to keep Russell's spoils, which was why they said they needed to ask for his opinion. Otherwise, they would have given it to Russell when he visited SHIELD last time. Seeing Coulson's sudden tightening expression, Russell was also a little puzzled. "What's going on today?" First Loki, then Coulson. "This doesn't fit your persona." Shaking his head inwardly, Russell ignored them. Although he possessed telepathic abilities and could eavesdrop on thoughts, he only used it occasionally for fun. Normally, he respected other people's privacy. Otherwise, life would be much less enjoyable. Arriving at a secluded corner with Coulson, Russell asked first, "What do you want, Coulson?" Coulson straightened up, regaining his composure, and said calmly, "It's about the dragon bones in the hand's possession." They can be used to make life-extending and resurrection potions, so, Russell raised an eyebrow. These are spoils of war from the Purge of the Hand, and you, Russell, were involved. SHIELD wants to know what your opinion is on how to handle the dragon bones. Whatever you want, Russell said casually. Callson's face lit up, and he didn't hide his feelings, aiming for genuine reciprocity. Russell, I thought you were going to reclaim the dragon bones on behalf of Kamartaj. Dragon bones, just a trinket, Russell said calmly. Extending lifespan was his specialty. And it was absolutely safe with no side effects, much more reliable than dragon bones. By the way, Callson, just a heads up, be careful of the side effects. Side effects? Could you elaborate, Russell? Callson asked humbly. SHIELD had already obtained information about the side effects of dragon bones from the Hand. But Callson naturally wouldn't refuse a chance to get some information for free. Russell slowly explained, one is resurrection using dragon bones. Each resurrection erases a portion of humanity. The reason is that after the soul is summoned from hell through the dragon bones, it doesn't get purified before returning to the body. The solution is to find a sorcerer or use other methods to nurture the soul before letting it return to the body. Another is that dragon bones originate from a magical creature, the Elder. The Elder's origin is still unclear. And all things related to magic share a common point. The source determines everything. Whether there are any unknown contingency plans within the dragon bones, nobody knows. Upon hearing Russell's first point, Callson's face lit up. SHIELD possessed more than one method of resurrection. They also knew the drawbacks of resurrection, but the reason remained a mystery. Unexpectedly, Russell provided the answer. Truly worthy of being called the Archmage Russell. So knowledgeable and erudite. However, upon hearing Russell's second point, Callson's expression became uncertain, filled with considerable anxiety. The dragon bones resurrection function was a safeguard for high-ranking SHIELD agents. But if there were problems, that was another matter entirely. High-ranking agents also meant a high level of secrecy. Security and stability were paramount. Once Callson calmed down, Russell revealed his true intentions. Is there anything else? If not, tell me about mine. I also need SHIELD's help. Callson composed himself. No, that's all. Russell, please tell me, what do you need SHIELD's help with? Russell then recounted the Hand incident in detail. Although the Hand incident was fraught with twists and turns, Russell never forgot his original intention. His initial goal was simply to completely dismantle a drug smuggling network. First, he accidentally discovered Madame Gao's drug factory and the thousands of deaf-mute people working there. He commissioned Matt to help investigate, discovering that this drug factory was connected to a drug smuggling ring on Sakura Island. Then, the primal demon was implicated, and finally, the Sakura Island pantheon was brought into the picture. After hearing this, Callson was speechless for a long time. So, the fall of Sakura Island was due to drug smuggling. So, Russell, you hope that we can help completely eradicate all the people and forces involved in this industry, both upstream and downstream. Callson clarified his thoughts. This is outside the scope of SHIELD's operations. However, we will report it to Interpol for handling and supervise the process to ensure the mission is successfully completed. Russell nodded. Also, properly resettle those deaf-mute people. Those who have gone astray, help them find suitable jobs. Those who actively joined, or even participated in crimes, should be punished according to the law. You officials should know more about this than I do. Okay, Russell. Callson nodded in agreement. Then he walked aside, took out his phone, and dialed Nick Fury to explain the situation. Russell watched all this, inwardly sighing. Things are different now. Before, Callson's attitude was primarily friendly, aiming to recruit Russell into the Avengers. But ever since Russell sank Sakura Island, Callson's attitude had unconsciously shifted to one of awe. Like the awe one feels for a god. The next chapter should be around 10:30. Chapter 80 Mephisto's counterattack triggered. According to Russell, as long as Hope is resurrected within this time frame, the drawbacks can be avoided. However, if we delay any longer, the energy Russell provided to nurture Hope's soul will dissipate. Resurrecting Hope then will likely result in the loss of some of her memories. Dr. Pym, if you hand over the method for creating Pym particles, SHIELD will help resurrect Hope. Make your choice quickly, Dr. Pym, time is running out. The energy Russell provided can only last for a month, there are only 2 days left. Inside a room at SHIELD headquarters, in the Trist Wing base, Nick Fury was earnestly trying to persuade Dr. Pym to hand over the method for creating the Pym particles. Although threatening the lives of his recruited agents to force her father to hand over the patented technology was shameless, Nick Fury was capable of it. The reason was simple: the Pym particles were too important. They were the key to SHIELD's journey through the multiverse. This scene had played out many times in the past month, but Dr. Pym had remained unmoved. Dr. Pym scoffed, unmoved by Nick Fury's pleas. HMPH, I won't believe your SHIELD lies and hand over the Pym particles. You say the mastermind behind Hope's death is Hydra? Where's the evidence? After all this time, not a single clue. How can I trust you? Hearing Dr. Pym speak, Nick Fury smiled confidently. We've found evidence. He then pushed a document and a lighter through the gap in the glass partition and handed Dr. Pym. This is the dossier from back then, along with Hope's dictated action report and the results of SHIELD's investigation. Dr. Pym, this document is extremely important. Burn it after reading. Dr. Pym suspiciously took the document and began to read it. Upon reaching a certain page, Dr. Pym's pupils suddenly dilated, and his hands trembled involuntarily. After a long pause, Dr. Pym picked up the lighter and burned the document. Does Hope know about this? Dr. Pym asked. She's not high enough, Nick Fury replied. I need to see Hope to check the information. Don't worry, I won't tell her anything she shouldn't know, Dr. Pym requested. Okay, I'll have her come over now, Nick Fury agreed. A short while later, Hope's spirit was brought over. Although her form was ethereal, her eyes were clear. It was clear that Hope was fully conscious. Dr. Pym, in front of Nick Fury, reviewed the documents with Hope. He would frequently interrogate her on a single issue from multiple angles, like an interrogation of a criminal. Hope answered each question. Finally, Dr. Pym confirmed that the documents Nick Fury had given him, at least regarding Hope, were accurate. However, this didn't mean the information couldn't be falsified. With SHIELD's capabilities, creating two fake documents based on a single genuine one was effortless. After a long silence, looking at his daughter Hope's illusory figure, Dr. Pym made a decision. I can teach you how to create Pym particles, but I'll only teach it to Hope. You must revive her first, okay? Nick Fury nodded, agreeing without hesitation. Currently, SHIELD has two methods of resurrection. One is GH325, and the other is Dragon Bones. GH325 is a resurrection drug developed by the Kree aliens. It's a technological method. The side effect is that resurrection is accompanied by intense pain. Furthermore, resurrection will worsen the target's psychological state, requiring memory replacement to resolve. Dragon Bones, a mysterious substance extracted from the fossils of magical creatures, are a magical technique. The side effect is the loss of some humanity and memories after resurrection. Moreover, Dragon Bones derived from magical artifacts may harbor unknown risks. After Nick Fury explained this in detail to Hope, he asked, Hope Van Dyne, your soul is well nurtured. The second method has almost no side effects. Which do you choose? The second one, Dragon Bones. Without hesitation, Hope made her choice. Unknown risks? If there were any, let Mephisto worry about them. Anyway, her soul didn't belong to her now. Why suffer the consequences of the first option? In a daze, Hope recalled the day she signed the agreement with Mephisto. Mephisto, Hope Van Dyne, become my apostle and return to the real universe to do one thing for me. In return, I will allow you to move freely in the real universe. For example, to visit your elderly father. Hope, what is it? Mephisto, find Agatha the witch. Hope, okay. Mephisto, sign the agreement. Back in hell, facing Mephisto's raging flames, Hope dared not refuse. Confused and bewildered, she signed a pact with Mephisto. Upon returning to the real universe and awakening, Hope realized she had been tricked. Even if she hadn't agreed, Mephisto would have demanded her soul. However, during her resurrection, Mephisto hadn't contacted her once, seemingly indifferent to the task he had ordered her to do. Suddenly, Hope felt a suction force drawing her soul. It was her physical body, her body repaired by the Dragon Bones. Following this force, Hope's soul returned to her body. During this process, body and soul rubbed against each other, adapting. Finally, soul and body merged. The pure, attribute-less energy that Russell had given, which had been protecting Hope's soul, also merged into Hope's body and dissipated completely. Hope felt the weight of her body under Earth's gravity for the first time in a long time. Before she could even readjust to the feeling of having a physical body, a voice rang in her ear. "My apostle, Hope Van Dyne, find me the witch Agatha." Hope's expression changed. It was Mephisto's voice. He had come knocking the moment Russell's energy was depleted. In the Hell dimension, Mephisto suddenly burst into laughter. This time, he hadn't intended to get something for nothing. Once Russell's energy disappeared and he stopped paying attention to Hope, he would transform her into a demon, allowing her to move freely in the real world. Unexpectedly, someone had helped resurrect Hope, saving him a step. Moreover, this way, Hope wouldn't have his presence, making her harder to detect. Seeing the succubi, who were playing music, stop and look at him, Mephisto waved his hand. "Keep playing, keep dancing." Just as Russell was sitting in a corner, drinking cup after cup of coconut water, Tony came over. "You've been making quite a fuss lately, Archmage Russell." Tony's voice preceded his arrival. "Archmage Russell." Russell raised an eyebrow and nodded in satisfaction. That nickname does suit me quite well. Come on. Everyone in Camartage knows you, Russell. You don't even know the simplest sorcerer's language, let alone the more advanced signs, runes, and spell theory." Tony's tone was sour. From a traditional sorcerer's perspective, he was a perfect student, a genius with a perfect score of 100. He was proficient in both theory and practice. Russell, on the other hand, was a zero, not even a slacker. But now, the Avengers and everyone in SHIELD were almost convinced he was a fraud. Russell smiled, ignoring Tony's sour words, and explained, "It's not that I can't, it's that I don't need to learn." "Tell me, which spell don't I know?" Tony smiled back. "You may know it, but can you teach others? I heard that someone brought back 2 young men from Sokovia, wanting to take them as disciples, but the Ancient One intercepted them." Hearing this, Russell's face darkened. "Who spread this rumor? When did I ever think about taking on disciples? I'm only 26, they're all 20. Disciple? More like junior brother." "Ho ha ho ho ha ho ho," Tony laughed. Russell laughed along. After the laughter subsided, Tony cut to the chase. "So, what do you want?" Russell didn't mince words. "I'm planning to borrow a mature cloning technology from somewhere to recreate a body for Matt. I'll need your help, and to check for any backdoors." "Mature cloning technology? Backdoors?" Tony raised an eyebrow. "Tell me more about it," Russell explained. "The cloning technology comes from a family of inheritors in the multiverse. When they die, their souls can automatically return to a pre-cloned spare body. The technology seems quite mature. As for backdoors, they seem to be able to occupy bodies cloned by others as well. The key point was the last one. If it couldn't be resolved, it would become a hidden danger, constantly distracting Russell. As for the technology aspect, among the people Russell knew, Tony was undoubtedly the most skilled. Whether his expertise matched Tony's was not Russell's concern. Tony would handle that himself. Russell continued, "Tony, your parents and butler can also be resurrected using this technology." Russell thought Tony would be happy to hear this, but Tony shook his head. "No need," Tony explained. "I asked them before. They said they don't know anyone in the real world anymore. Not only would they be lonely after being resurrected, but they might also fall behind the times. It's better to start over in the spiritual world of the Vishanti dimension." "Is that so?" Russell nodded, no longer asking questions. "But Matt is still young, he doesn't have this problem," Tony complained. "When are you planning to make your move? Take me with you. It would be best if I were there to oversee things. Otherwise, if you're there copying data and moving equipment, you might miss some crucial information." "Still looking, I'll make my move as soon as I find it." Russell pretended not to hear Tony's complaint, replying while pondering to himself. "Bringing Tony along? That's not a bad idea. We could bring Wanda too, take the Sorcerer Supreme Order out for a spin, broaden their horizons, maybe they'll grow faster." As for what Pietro would think, Russell was just a senior, not a teacher. He didn't need to comfort him. Chapter 81 Archmage Loki, Apprentice Mage Matt. Loki was very happy lately. Since leaving Asgard and arriving in Camartage, no one treated him or Thor differently. In Camartage, both he and Thor began their apprenticeship as novice sorcerers. And in just 8 or 9 days, he had impressed many sorcerers in Camartage with his vast magical knowledge. Now, in Camartage, people called him Archmage Loki. Russell was right. The sorcerers of Kamartaj are all good people, and they speak so kindly. I love it there, but now, I will continue to conquer the mortals outside Kamartaj, letting them also experience the greatness of magic. In the center of the crowd, Loki, surrounded by admirers, was radiant. He was no longer satisfied with merely describing the wonders of magic, he intended to demonstrate it to these muggles himself. As Loki's magic flowed, lifelike illusions appeared, dazzling and mesmerizing. Even the most advanced movie special effects could not compare. Loki, the Archmage. Loki, the Archmage, a girl of about 15 or 16 years old, was the first to cheer, calling out Loki's nickname in Kamartaj. Loki, the Archmage. Loki, the Archmage. The crowd followed suit. Loki himself sat in a corner chair, a glass of wine in his hand. He squinted slightly, taking a small sip. It was clear he was enjoying the cheers. Russell, seeing this, didn't disturb him. After finishing his business with Tony, Russell had planned to ask Loki how he was doing in Kamartaj. Now he didn't need to ask, he was certainly doing quite well. Russell remained seated, gently lifting his wrist. Divine power flowed through his body, like an invisible hand, lifting the cheering girl to a seat beside him. Eileen, it's getting late, you should go home. Although you asked Tony to help you send a message to your family, they'll be worried after so long without any news. The girl was Eileen. Since going to Kamartaj with Tony, she had stayed there for the past few days. The first few days were spent waiting for news from Russell, and the last few were spent with Matt. Tonight, Russell came to New York to see Tony and brought her back along. Earlier, Russell had been busy with business, so he had let Erin wander around the party and eat and drink as she pleased. Since she was already there, she figured she could stay and enjoy herself before going back. Erin nodded, then Russell, you can take me back, okay? Russell flicked his wrist, his fingers drawing a light circle. A fist-sized circle of fire appeared. As the circle of fire floated forward, it rapidly expanded, forming a portal. It stopped right in front of Erin. Before Erin stepped into the portal, Russell suddenly remembered something and instructed her, Erin, go to the Nelson and Murdoch law firm in Hell's Kitchen tomorrow. Tell Virginia Nelson about Matt. What do you mean? Erin asked. Tell them the truth, Russell answered. Eileen then asked, tell the truth, what if Virg Nelson doesn't believe you? Russell offered a suggestion, if Virg doesn't believe you, take him to the sanctuary in New York. Find the guardian mage there and have him teleport you to Kamartaj. Seeing is believing. Once you're at Kamartaj, he'll believe you. Okay, Eileen agreed and stepped into the portal. Russell felt a pang of regret. He had forgotten that although Matt was also an orphan, Matt had a close friend, Fergie Nelson. They were college classmates, roommates, interns, and business partners. In short, they were very close. After graduation, they opened a law firm together in Hell's Kitchen, Nelson and Murdoch. Matt had been missing for over 10 days without a trace, and Fergie was probably having trouble sleeping lately. Shaking his head helplessly, Russell's figure also vanished on the spot. Russell didn't plan to meet with the other Avengers members. They weren't close. With the opening and closing of a portal, he crossed time zones, the days and nights changed. Russell went from Tony's nighttime party in New York to the courtyard where the sorcerers practiced their morning rituals in Kamartaj. For most sorcerers, diligent practice day after day, year after year, was essential to improving their magical skills. Wanda and Pietro, two newly initiated junior disciples, were also diligently learning the proper spellcasting techniques. But this was irrelevant to Russell, he didn't need to. With nothing to do, Russell walked to a rocking chair in the corner, preparing to lie down and have a good nap. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a similarly out-of-place, aimless figure. Matt Murdoch. Matt, good morning. Russell, good morning. After exchanging greetings with Matt, Russell asked with concern, how are you settling into Kamartaj? Matt nodded, then shook his head. Russell looked at him, puzzled, his face full of black lines. Seeing this, Matt explained, the people here at Kamartaj are all very friendly. It's just that the spiritual body can't touch physical objects. After a while, with nothing to do, it gets a bit boring. The spiritual body can't touch physical objects. Russell fell silent, lost in thought. The first spiritual entity he encountered was the Ancient One, and the Ancient One didn't have this problem. Russell's divine power could directly touch the souls he encountered afterward, and he didn't notice the issue either. Furthermore, out of guilt, after rescuing Matt's soul, Russell directly used his most core attribute points to nurture it. From a spiritual perspective, Matt's soul was quite solid. And Russell hadn't seen Matt many times during this period. Considering all this, Russell hadn't discovered any inconvenience with Matt's soul. How did the Ancient One manage to transform a spirit into a physical entity? It shouldn't be that old-fashioned method of compressing energy, right? While pondering, Russell reached out. A ball of energy appeared in his palm, and he attempted to compress it. After a brief attempt, Russell gave up. Compressing energy would change its structure. A change in energy structure would make it unstable, even causing an explosion. It was impossible to become a physical entity. This was a transformation between the virtual and the real, not a change in the gaseous, liquid, or solid state of matter. However, Russell had a flash of inspiration and remembered something. Stephen Strange. In the movie Doctor Strange, he demonstrated the ability to astral projection and study magic all night long. This shows that astral projection contains techniques to help the spirit interfere with matter. Thinking of this, Russell looked up at Matt and asked, "Matt, Kamartaj has a spell that can help you interfere with reality with your spirit. Do you want to learn it?" Matt was delighted, but first confirmed, "This is a secret technique of Kamartaj, right? Can I learn it?" "Should I ask the Ancient One first?" Russell nodded. "Of course you can learn it. Kamartaj isn't a place where secrets are kept to oneself. The magic here is open to all eager learners. Yes, white magic belongs to Kamartaj and is open to all mages. Black magic and other highly dangerous spells are mostly private property. To learn them, you need the master's permission first." Hearing Russell's words, Matt looked at him expectantly. His expression, demeanor, and actions all seemed to say one thing: "Teach me." Russell smiled awkwardly. He knew all the other spells. Of course, he could teach them. If the student couldn't learn, it was the student's problem, not his. But the spell of astral projection was an exception. He could use it when his panel was at level 2. After leveling up, he couldn't use it anymore. Of course, his divine body could freely enter and leave the spiritual and material worlds, so it made no difference. Russell stood up and walked towards the mage Mordo in the courtyard, gesturing for Matt to follow. Senior Brother Mordo, Mage Russell. Mordo, who was inspecting and instructing the mages, was somewhat surprised to see Russell approaching. As long as Russell didn't suddenly decide to teach other mages, Mordo had no objection to Russell, the future Sorcerer Supreme. Although Russell was still relatively inexperienced, he was incredibly strong. He had fought Mephisto, slain the primal demon beast, and destroyed the Sakura Island Pantheon. Russell's glorious achievements had already spread throughout Kamartaj. The source of this news was the tea party personally hosted by the Ancient One every afternoon at 3 o'clock. It couldn't possibly be false. "Senior Brother Mordo, I'd like to ask you to help teach Matt magic." Mordo nodded in agreement. As long as Russell didn't intend to interfere with the mage's teaching, it was a minor issue. As for Matt, Mordo knew from their time together that he was a kind and upright person. That's no problem. However, without a physical body, cultivation would be much more dangerous. "Russell, you know, when drawing energy from the multiverse, any magical energy can corrupt the mind, and the physical body can help isolate some of it. Matt currently lacks a physical body, so he will be more susceptible to corruption than other mages." "No problem, I have a way." Russell smiled confidently, opening his palm to reveal a ball of pure energy floating on it. "When Matt learns spells, he can use my energy." Mordo closed his eyes, carefully sensing the energy with his mind. This energy came from the attribute points on Russell's character panel. It was non-toxic, harmless, and non-corrosive. When used on Russell himself, as long as it didn't exceed the panel's level limit, it could quickly boost his attributes. When used on others, it could nourish their souls and bodies, slowly increasing their strength. The only drawback might be that it wasn't particularly good at combat. After a long while, Mordo opened his eyes. The shock in his eyes was undisguised. "It really has no effect on the mind. You must understand, even energy from Vishanti can influence a mage's mind, making them more kind and peaceful. However, the influence of Vishanti's power is good on a moral level, so it's usually not considered a side effect." Mordo, unable to hide his excitement, asked in a trembling voice, "Russell, can other mages use this energy to cultivate?" Russell slowly shook his head. "All things related to magic share one thing in common: the source determines everything. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Spider-Man in Action. Generally, a mage's energy comes from three sources. First, it comes from the mage's own mental and spiritual energy. Through daily contact and absorption of magical energy from the multiverse, the mage's mind and spirit gradually strengthen, and this energy also grows stronger. This energy belongs to the mage and is safe and reliable. It is the energy the mage uses most frequently in daily activities and combat. It's important to note that when in contact with magical energy, it can constantly erode and affect the mage's mind. Therefore, mages absorb energy from the multiverse discreetly. Even so, almost all experienced mages have suffered from this. Second, it comes from energy borrowed from other dimensional demons. This energy is usually more powerful and destructive than the energy the mage cultivates themselves. However, borrowing energy often comes at a great cost. Therefore, mages only use this energy in high-intensity, high-stakes battles. Third, it comes from various magical items. These are usually created by powerful mages and certain beings in magical dimensions. As external objects, they are more controllable and safer than the second source of magic. However, just like before, the creator left a backdoor. The attribute point energy on Russell's panel isn't true magical energy, but it possesses similar characteristics. While it doesn't affect the mind, it can enhance physical constitution and nourish the soul. This is how attribute point energy corrupts mages. Anyone who has used Russell's attribute point energy to nourish their soul and enhance their body will have a bomb planted within them. The switch for this bomb is naturally in Russell's hands. The bomb's power depends on the amount of energy used. All things related to magic share a common point: the source determines everything. And I am the source of this energy, able to control it at any time, to do whatever I want. Mordo remains silent. While mages are using the energy provided by Russell for their training, if Russell has any ideas, he can easily distort the minds of other mages. Can the mages of Kamartaj unconditionally trust Russell? There's another point: my current energy isn't sufficient to support all mages' training. The problem isn't scarcity but inequality. Seeing Mordo's silence, Russell added. During the panel upgrade, attribute point energy has virtually no impact on Russell's combat power. However, Russell cannot freely absorb magical energy and convert it into attribute point energy. Absorbing too much magical energy will affect Russell's mind. After the panel upgrade is complete, he can consider opening an exchange service. He can also act as a middleman and take a cut, making a small profit. The dimensional space he seized from the beasts can be used as a transit point for exchanging magical energy for attribute point energy. After a moment, Mordo calmed down and apologized to Russell. I was presumptuous, Russell. While Kamartaj advocates sharing knowledge, it doesn't force mages to selflessly contribute. Moreover, your strength is more important than the improvement of other mages. Even if this special energy doesn't belong to Russell, but was discovered by him in a special place, Mordo has no reason to ask Russell to hand it over for all mages to share. On the contrary, if that were the case, Russell should be the only one to use this energy. What Mordo just said was sincere and the truth. Russell's power alone was more significant than all the other mages in Kamartaj combined. Russell smiled gently. It's alright, Mordo, you're just worried. If there are no problems, I'll leave Matt in Mordo's care for now. I'll go get busy. Mordo's lips twitched. Russell, you go ahead and get busy. Lie down. After the two finished talking, Matt left with Mordo. Although Russell and Mordo's conversation was somewhat cryptic, he could understand a little bit. Using Russell's energy would make him subject to Russell's control. But what did that have to do with him? Without Russell, he was still drifting aimlessly in the beast's dimension. After handing Matt over to Mordo, Russell returned to the rocking chair in the corner. He lay down and closed his eyes slightly. Wanda, Pietro, why aren't you saying anything now? Are you trying to ask about the heirs? Russell opened his eyes and sat up, looking at Wanda and Pietro, who were mimicking him as they lay in the rocking chair. Wanda and Pietro were a little embarrassed. Yes, Russell. Any news about the heirs? Russell sighed. He'd only told them about it yesterday. How could they have news so soon? But he could understand. Wanda, Pietro, if there's news about the heirs, I'll let you know. But don't forget, cloning technology alone isn't enough. You also need to become powerful enough to go to hell and retrieve your parents' souls. Staring blankly at me here won't make you stronger, Wanda nodded, explaining, I know, but I can't calm down right now. The Ancient One said I'm not suited for cultivation, Pietro also explained. Me too, Russell was speechless. Am I really not cut out to be a teacher? I can't even draw a clear picture. Russell smiled helplessly and comforted the two. Then just stay here and get some sleep. Don't worry, the Spider-Men are on the move, and so is the heirs. Morlun, a member of the heirs, is second only to Patriarch Sorcinsterzinth. He's been very unhappy lately. Since the heirs captured the Spider Totem God, the Weaver of Earth 000, Sorwas, the Patriarch, unexpectedly discovered that the Weaver possessed the ability to travel through the multiverse. Under the guidance of family member Jenny, they began using the Weaver's abilities to travel between different dimensions, searching for and hunting down all Spider-Men in the multiverse. Initially, the operation went very smoothly. In every world connected by the Weaver's web of fate, there was a Spider-Man. A lone Spider-Man. But as the multiverse expanded, many Spider-Men died. A few Spider-Men discovered that someone was specifically hunting them. After investigation, they discovered the existence of the heirs. These Spider-Men then united Spider-Men from other universes and left their original worlds to fight the heirs in the multiverse. Ultimate Spider-Man 2099 Miguel was one of them. Miguel's Spider-Man League has recruited many Spider-Men, making it increasingly difficult to find a lone Spider-Man. However, recently, Mullen and his heirs family discovered and breached a Spider-Man League stronghold, obtaining the coordinates of over a dozen universes. As the leader, he was allocated 5 of them. But the first 4 universes yielded nothing. The Spider-Man League likely already relocated the Spider-Men in time. This is the last one, Earth 65. Mullen didn't hold out much hope, he was just routinely checking. 5 Spider-Men. There are 5 Spider-Men in this universe. Mullen was overjoyed as he read the newspaper article. And they've even formed a band, performing every Saturday night at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. Mullen stared at the names and pictures of several Spider-Men in the newspaper, trembling with excitement. The Spider-Man Band, members, British Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, Mech Spider-Man, Ghost Spider-Man, Spider-Ham. Mullen grinned and headed to the Metropolitan Theater in New York to lie in wait. Night fell, in an abandoned warehouse somewhere on New York Harbor. 5 Spider-Men sat huddled together, discussing how to ambush the heirs family on Earth 65. Spider-Ham, didn't Spider-Man the Wizard say we should operate normally? When the heirs come looking for us, we can just press the pager and call Spider-Man the Wizard for help. Ghost Spider-Gwen shook her head. I got some information. Spider-Man the Wizard had a friend who also had a pager. He still died in the end, his body was gone, only his soul remained. How could this be? Spider-Ham exclaimed, somewhat incredulous. Could this pager be fake, and Spider-Man the Wizard lying to us? No, the pager is real. The Wizard Spider-Man didn't lie to you. Gwen denied Spider-Ham's claim and explained for Russell. The Wizard Spider-Man's friend was instantly killed. Didn't even have time to press the pager. Instantly killed. Didn't even have time to press the pager. Jaeger Spider-Man. Penny Parker's expression changed. She hadn't been bitten by a spider. Her physical combat strength was average. She mainly relied on her Jaeger for fighting. If the Wizard Spider-Man's friend could be instantly killed, she could be too. Ghost Spider-Man, do you have any good ideas? Shadow Spider-Man asked in a deep voice. Gwen smiled confidently. Of course she had thought of a way, which was why she had called a meeting. We don't necessarily have to use ourselves as bait, exposing ourselves in the open and giving the heirs family the first opportunity. Then what should we do? Penny Spider-Man asked. If they did what Russell said, she would undoubtedly be the most dangerous one. If Gwen had a better idea, she would wholeheartedly support it. Gwen didn't keep them in suspense. We can lure them out, so we'll form a Spider-Man band and choose a fixed time and place to perform, and then, spread our fame. Make it as widespread as possible. As long as the heirs come to this universe, they'll know. That way, they won't have to search for us everywhere. They just need to wait for us to appear at a fixed time in a fixed place. Spider-Ham asked doubtfully, what's the difference? Aren't we still in the open? Of course there's a difference, Spider-Man Noir explained. We just need to keep an eye on one place, and when the heirs come to this universe, it'll be easy to find their trail. Even if they don't show up, we don't need to constantly expose ourselves and be on guard 24/7. The 5 Spider-Men exchanged glances. They unanimously agreed to lure them out. Chapter 83 Whitebird Ancient One, Hell is but a trifle. Earth 65, Nepal, Kamartaj. The Ancient One, with his white beard, had been silently watching the Spider-Men. Although Russell was inhuman, arbitrarily ordering him around as his teacher, and then blocking signals and disappearing without a trace before returning to Earth 404, what could the teacher do? Forgive him, of course. At most, he'd throw a few more universes onto his shoulder later. While the Spider-Men and the Ancient One waited, a ripple appeared in the space-time of Earth 65. This was the ripple of the web of life and fate, the Weaver. Following the ripple, the Ancient One's eyes lit up. The heirs had arrived. Using the Time Stone, a fake, to pinpoint their location, the Ancient One drew a circle with his finger, opening a portal. The show was about to begin. He wanted to invite Russell to watch. Sparks flickered, and the portal slowly opened. Contrary to the Ancient One's expectations, the other side of the portal wasn't Russell, but a young female sorceress dressed in the plain white robes of Kamartaj. The Ancient One, with his white beard, carefully examined the young female sorceress on the other side of the portal. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "Are you Wanda?" Wanda glared at the Ancient One, somewhat annoyed. This old man was so rude. Opening a portal so casually near someone. Seeing Wanda's expression, the Ancient One understood that she might have misunderstood something. So he slowly explained, "I'm here to see Russell. I just don't know why I've been located here." "Did he give you the Time Stone?" Wanda believed the Ancient One's explanation, understanding that it was probably a misunderstanding. The crucial information about the Time Stone was known to very few. "I am Wanda Maximoff. Russell did lend me the Time Stone to study for a while." "And who are you, and why do you know me?" Wanda answered the Ancient One's question first, then posed her own. First Russell, then this mysterious old man with the white beard. What, they all know her? "I am the Ancient One of Earth 616. The Ancient One answered the first question first, then answered the second question with a strange tone. "As for why I know you, the Scarlet Witch is renowned even in the multiverse. Of course, you are just Wanda now, not the Scarlet Witch." Wanda pressed. "The Scarlet Witch? What's that?" "The Wanda from another universe." She felt she had found the truth behind Russell's understanding of her and his belief in her boundless potential. The Ancient One nodded. "Yes, then can I become as strong as the Wanda from another universe?" Wanda continued to ask excitedly. She remembered Russell saying that if one was strong enough, one could snatch their parents' souls back from hell. The Ancient One slowly shook his head. "It's hard to say, Wanda. You know, the same person in different universes can be very different. Including personality, height, appearance, and even gender. Take myself as an example. Isn't the Ancient One from your universe a woman? If I didn't tell you, could you connect the two of us? But you are both Sorcerers Supreme, equally powerful. Ancient One isn't my real name. My counterpart in many universes died before becoming Sorcerer Supreme. Moreover, we are not equally powerful. I am stronger." The white-bearded Ancient One explained, then asked Wanda. "Wanda, why are you so obsessed with power? A sorcerer's practice should strive to maintain a peaceful mind. Especially for someone like you with chaos magic." Wanda remained silent. The bald Ancient One had said this to her as well. Russell said that only with great power can I retrieve my parents' souls from hell. The white-bearded Ancient One's face darkened. "This wretched disciple, misleading others, sorcerer, how dare you speak ill of me behind my back?" "What did I say wrong?" Russell's voice rang out. The white-bearded Ancient One reprimanded her with a dark face. "Wanda has only just begun her training, and you've already set her such a difficult goal. What kind of teacher are you? Do you know how to teach? Don't you understand the importance of gradual progression?" Under the Ancient One's 3 consecutive questions, Russell's eyes darted around before he finally managed to stammer, "I'm not Wanda's teacher, you are. Besides, I'm thinking that pressure is a motivator." "I'm Wanda's teacher?" the Ancient One asked, puzzled. Knowing that Russell had given the Time Stone to Wanda, the Ancient One's first thought was that Wanda was Russell's disciple. After all, that was the Time Stone, a fake, not something casual. "Yes," Russell nodded. The Ancient One looked at Wanda. Wanda hesitated for a moment before saying, "My teacher is indeed the Ancient One. It's just that we're from different universes." The Ancient One nodded. She first instructed Russell, "You shouldn't put too much pressure on Wanda in the future. Pressure is a motivator, But you can't just add pressure like you do. You need to proceed gradually, not force it. You should study psychology when you have time. A good understanding of psychology is also important for an excellent sorcerer supreme. You know, many sorcerers encounter psychological problems during their spellcasting practice. Then, he kindly said to Wanda, "Wanda, don't put too much pressure on yourself. In a few days, when your teacher has time, I'll go to hell and bring your parents' souls back." Normally, the Ancient One wouldn't do this, but who told Russell to do such a terrible thing? Hearing this, Wanda was overjoyed and exclaimed incredulously, "Really, Ancient One?" The Ancient One nodded. Just hell. The heavy burden that had been weighing on her heart for so many days suddenly lifted, and Wanda burst into tears of joy. She turned around, hugged Russell, and buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The Ancient One, shouldn't you have rushed through the portal and been crying in my arms? Why are you hugging that wretched disciple? Russell was somewhat at a loss. He hadn't expected Wanda to suddenly erupt in emotion. Had he put too much pressure on her lately? He gently patted Wanda's back as he pondered this. "It seems I'm really not suited to be a teacher. I can't even paint a good picture." Looking at Wanda, who was sobbing uncontrollably in his arms, he couldn't stop for a while. To avoid disturbing Wanda, Russell secretly established a private call with the Ancient One. "Russell, sorcerer, what can I do for you, Ancient One? The show's about to begin on Earth 65. Do you want to come, Russell? Have the Spider-Men discovered the heirs? Why isn't my pager beeping, Ancient One?" "No, but it'll be soon. Anyway, there's a good show. Do you want to come, Russell?" "Yes. But I need to bring a few more people, so it might be a little late, Ancient One. As soon as possible. I'll try to buy you some time, Russell." "Okay, thank you, sorcerer." As Russell's private call with the Ancient One ended, the portal slowly dissipated. Looking at Wanda, still sobbing softly in his arms, Russell felt helpless. He still had to hurry to find Tony. Energy flow, spell, form of Ekron. A clone emerged from behind Russell. Reaching a distance, it didn't call Tony directly, but instead dialed Jarvis's number first. It was late at night in New York. Russell didn't want any strange noises to come through the phone. The call was answered instantly. "Hello, Mr. Russell." "Hello, Jarvis. Could you check if Tony is free right now?" "Yes, Mr. Russell." A moment later, Tony's voice came from the other end. "Russell, is there any news from the Air family?" "Yes, Tony, we're about to leave." As soon as Russell finished speaking, a circle of fire appeared in the courtyard. With a portal opening, Tony, carrying a briefcase, stepped out. Tony's gaze lingered on the two Russells, puzzled. "What's going on?" "Wanda, the Russell clone briefly explained what had just happened to Tony, explaining why Wanda was sobbing in his arms. After listening, Tony patted Russell's clone on the shoulder. "Take my advice, Russell. You're really not suited to be a teacher, Russell." "Russell, Tony, I have a task for you, Tony." "Russell, go tell Pietro this news." The Ancient One with Whitebeard agreed to help retrieve Wanda and Pietro's parents' souls from hell. Tony looked at Wanda, who was hugging Russell and sobbing softly, and was speechless. He asked, "Russell, why don't you go? I don't want Pietro crying in my arms later." Russell looked at Tony quietly. "You owe me a favor." Tony pouted and turned to look for Pietro. After a while, Russell heard suppressed sobbing coming from afar. They really are siblings. Their reactions to the news were almost identical. The only pity was that Pietro didn't hug Tony. Earth 65, New York. In a monitoring room, Penny Spider-Man was playing a mobile game out of boredom. She had already set up the program. It would alert her whenever someone suspected of belonging to the Ayers family was detected. She would hear the alarm automatically, without needing to constantly watch the screen beep. Beep. Just as Penny was engrossed in her Spider-Man game, a short, sharp alarm sounded. She exited the game and put down her phone. Penny looked up. On the large screen was a photo of a face captured by one of the cameras. That contemptuous gaze, that evil smile. Even through the screen, the aura she exuded filled Spider-Man with disgust. Moron. One of Spider-Man's most powerful and dangerous enemies, Moron of the Ayers family. With just one glance, Penny recognized who it was on the screen. Without much thought, Penny decisively pressed the intercom, connecting with the other four Spider-Men, and quickly said, "The Ayers family has appeared. It's Moron. Come to the monitoring room for a meeting now. Remember, keep a low profile, don't use your powers, And don't reveal your location prematurely, Roger. For the four Spider-Men, originally scattered throughout New York, concealing their identities and busy with their own affairs, quickly sprang into action, heading towards the Metropolitan Opera. The war between Spider-Man and the Ayers family was about to begin. Chapter 84. Moron confidently went for it. Earth 65, New York. 5 Spider-Men gathered in the command center, using advanced surveillance to pinpoint moron of the Ayers family. Ghost Spider-Gwen looked at Spider-Man and spoke first. Is it confirmed to be someone from the Ayers family? If so, let's notify Spider-Man the Wizard. Spider-Man the Wizard nodded. I'm sure, this is moron. Notify Spider-Man the Wizard. The information on the Ayers family was provided by Spider-Man the Wizard, so the final confirmation naturally needed to be completed by him. After hearing Spider-Man the Wizard's confirmation, Gwen took out her pager and pressed it decisively. The instant the pager was pressed, a portal flashing with golden sparks rapidly opened. Accompanied by fireworks, Russell, Tony, Wanda, and Pietro emerged. Spider-Man the Wizard's pager is really reliable. The support arrived as soon as it was pressed. A murmur rang out from the shadows, making it unclear to Spider-Man who was speaking for them. Spider-Man of the British Empire. The British Spider-Man pointed to the figure on the big screen and introduced him to Russell. The person on the screen is Mullen, from the Ayers family. He's located at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York. The Spider-Man of the British Empire. Wanda and Pietro were taken aback, then realized that the Spider-Man of the British Empire referred to Russell. The British Spider-Man added, that place is crowded, it's not suitable for using large-scale destructive spells. Spider-Man of the British Empire, do you have any other ideas? Should we try to lure Mullen to a secluded spot so you can use your magic? Russell slowly shook his head. No need. I have a spell, Mirror Dimension. It can pull Mullen into another dimension, avoiding harming innocents. With a wave of his hand, Russell opened a portal to the opera house where Mullen was. The moment the portal opened, Mullen's gaze fell upon it. 5 Spider-Men, plus 4 helpers. Mullen licked his lips, muttering to himself. No. 6 Spider-Men, plus 3 helpers, Russell retorted. The next second, Mullen's figure activated, passing through the portal and rushing towards the group at lightning speed. Just 5 Spider-Men and 4 henchmen. Mullen was completely unafraid. It wasn't like he hadn't killed Spider-Man's henchmen before. A fierce glint flashed in Russell's eyes. Daring to rush through his portal, he was truly courting death. If Russell wanted, he could easily close the portal the moment Mullen passed through, cutting him in two. However, Russell didn't do that. His goal wasn't to kill Mullen, but to capture him alive. Then, he would extract the coordinates of the Ayers family from him. Russell's energy flowed, stretching and distorting space. Crack, crack. A sound like a mirror shattering rang out as Russell pulled everyone into the mirror space. Russell's current strength was no longer suitable for fighting on Earth. Seeing Mullen rushing towards them at lightning speed, the reactions of the group varied. British Spider-Man, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Peony, and Spider-Ham's alarm bells rang, their spider senses throbbing incessantly. As if encountering their natural enemy, their instincts constantly warned them. Danger! 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 Spider-Man, the sorcerer, was careless. How could he let Mullen get close so easily? Pietro placed his hand on Wanda's shoulder. If Mullen's first target was them, he would take Wanda and evade him. Although Mullen was fast, Pietro was confident. He was faster. Tony and Gwen, however, did not react at all. In Pietro's peripheral vision, Russell raised his leg, controlling the force and angle, and kicked lightly. A kick, at a speed Mullen couldn't even react to, struck him in the waist. Pietro's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't even see how Russell had kicked Mullen. Crack! Bang! The sonic boom and the sound of Russell's leg striking Mullen's waist rang out one after the other. Mullen was like a football that had been powerfully kicked, flying backward at a speed far exceeding the speed at which he had been hit. In mid-air, blood spurted from his 7 orifices, splattering all over the ground. After landing, he rolled dozens of times before finally collapsing to the ground. Seeing Morin lying motionless on the ground, the reactions of the others varied. Tony and Gwen were unsurprised. They already knew Russell's true nature, a simple, brutal, and easily crushing opponent. Conversely, they were surprised that Morin hadn't been instantly obliterated. Wanda and Pietro, however, gaped in astonishment. In their minds, Russell was a powerful, elegant, and mysterious sorcerer. In battle, He should have unleashed a dazzling array of spells, killing enemies from afar, a stark contrast to the image of him effortlessly and brutally injuring his opponent with a single kick. The 4 Spider-Men were dumbfounded, especially the British Spider-Man. He had dealt with the heirs several times and was well aware of Morin's power. Countless Spider-Men from the multiverse had died at Morin's hands, including some powerful Spider-Men and their powerful allies. He's definitely not Spider-Man. The British Spider-Man's mind raced. He hadn't forgotten that when he first met Russell, his spider sense hadn't triggered immediately. Although Spider-Ham explained that the wizard Spider-Man could freely control whether or not to trigger his spider sense, it also made sense that Russell wasn't Spider-Man. However, this wizard Spider-Man Russell was clearly a friend of Ghost Spider-Man, close to the Spider-Men, so he naturally didn't need to expose him. In a short while, Morin recovered somewhat from his severe injuries. Barely managing to stand up, leaning against the wall, Morin looked at Russell. Ahem, who are you? Russell stepped forward, looking down at Morin with murderous intent. Wizard Spider-Man. The Terminator of the heirs, the Terminator of the heirs. These words struck Morin's mind like a resounding bell. He remembered the ancient prophecy. The heirs would end at the hands of a certain Spider-Man in the future. It was because of this prophecy that the heirs hunted Spider-Man across the multiverse, attempting to completely extinguish the power of the Spider Totem. However, Morin sneered, "You're not Spider-Man, you don't possess the power of the Spider Totem." Russell chuckled, secretly activating the Spider Totem fragment. "Are you sure?" Morin's expression changed. A yearning from his soul told him that Russell possessed the aura of the Spider Totem. The prophecy about the end of the heirs family resurfaced in Morin's mind. This time, Morin could no longer ignore it. Impossible. How could a bug like Spider-Man be so strong? The facts are right before your eyes. Are you still going to deny them? How weak you are, Morin of the heirs family. Russell's voice was mocking, constantly piercing Morin's heart. How can someone as weak as you inherit your father Soros's position and shoulder everything for the family? How can someone as weak as you stop me from ending the heirs family? Tony looked at Gwen and asked, "What is he, Russell, doing?" In Tony's memory, Russell wasn't the type to talk so much and enjoy mocking his opponents. Gwen shook her head, indicating that she didn't know either. "I don't know either. But Russell said that as long as he captures a member of the heirs family, he can follow the trail to find the heirs' lair. It's mind control," Wanda explained softly. "Russell is trying to mind control Morin. If he can break through his mental defenses, it will be easier to succeed." On the other side, Russell continued to verbally attack Morin. Morin's face grew increasingly pale, and he seemed on the verge of a mental breakdown. Finally, as if courting death, he mustered his last strength and attacked Russell. Russell dodged and kicked Morin again. He controlled the force, much lighter than the first kick, to ensure that he wouldn't kill Morin. "Kill me, stop torturing me, Wizard Spider-Man," Morin said weakly, lying on the ground. He truly wanted to die. Then he would revive and send the news of Wizard Spider-Man back to his father, Soros, and the rest of the family. But Russell saw through his thoughts and naturally wouldn't listen to him. "You think I don't know what you're thinking? Weak Morin." Russell slowly revealed Morin's last card. "I know you have a way to resurrect. After the heirs die, they can be resurrected in cloned bodies. But guess what? Other Spider-Men can't do anything with souls. As the sorcerer Spider-Man, can I capture your soul?" Hearing Russell's words, Morin's face changed again. This time, he was truly on the verge of collapse. Seeing this, Russell kicked Morin again. Spell, Astral Projection. Morin's body twitched slightly before collapsing to the ground. Morin's soul was kicked out by Russell. In his confusion, Morin's soul heard Russell's voice in its ear. "You can't go back. Don't even think about sending the message back. You will watch the heirs die one by one. In the end, the entire family will be destroyed, like a devil's whisper." Russell's voice shattered Morin's illusion. In a daze, Morin seemed to see Russell find the heirs' headquarters and kill them one by one. Among them was his powerful father, Soros. "How you?" Russell let out a long sigh. This mind control was far more difficult than simple mind reading. However, it was all worth it. Russell raised his hand, and a ball of attribute point energy appeared, then slowly merged into Morin's body and disappeared. Morin's injuries healed, and his aura strengthened. Russell said softly, "On Earth 65, you successfully hunted down 5 Spider-Men and absorbed their Spider Totem power. After absorbing the power of these 5 Spider-Men, You encountered the powerful wizard Spider-Man, and you were no match for him and fled. You suspect that the wizard Spider-Man is the Spider-Man prophesied to end the heirs. You must go home, find your father Sorwas, and gather your people to surround and kill the wizard Spider-Man. To ensure that the heirs family is not ended by the wizard Spider-Man, I'm going back to Earth 001 to gather my people and my father, and then we'll hunt down Spider-Man the wizard. Chapter 85. This is not a prophecy, it's a curse. Earth 65, Kamartaj. The Ancient One, with his white beard, was remotely watching the spectacle through mirror magic. A clone of Russell accompanied him. After watching the entire show, the Ancient One couldn't help but complain, "You did all the work by yourself? Why did you call Tony, Wanda, and Pietro over here? These kinds of battles you could easily control should be left to them to practice." Russell stammered, "I initially planned to let them go up and practice, the mirror space was all set up. But Moron slandered me, saying I wasn't Spider-Man." The Ancient One glanced at Russell and sighed helplessly. He couldn't do anything with this drama queen disciple. Then, in the battles at the heirs' headquarters, hold back a bit, let them practice. Apart from Soros and Moron, the other members of the heirs' families are insignificant. Tony, Wanda, and Pietro can handle them perfectly well. Russell nodded, indicating he understood. After a while, the Ancient One asked, "Russell, do you know the origin of the prophecy about the heirs' family?" Russell's heart skipped a beat. The heirs' family will end with Spider-Man. Is there anything special about this prophecy, and why do the heirs' family believe it so deeply? I recently consulted our founder, Agamotto, and received some information. The Ancient One paused for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "It's not a prophecy, but a curse. A curse from the very source of the heirs' family's origins, the curse of the god of the underworld, Cynthia, a curse that explains why the heirs' family believes it so deeply." But why? Russell wondered. Does the god of the underworld, Cynthia, have any grudge against Spider-Man? They're not on the same level, are they? The Ancient One explained to Russell, "The source of the heirs' family's power is the vampire totem. The god of vampire totems does have some connection to us. He's the blood god who was tricked by you and the Ancient One from another Earth. The creator of the vampire totems is the god of the underworld, Chthon. Billions of years ago, Chthon was banished from the material world. For many years, he has sought a way back. The web of life and fate, created by the ancient goddess Ness, inadvertently blocked Chthon's path back. The web of life and fate is closely linked to the spider totem, also created by Ness. Chthon hoped to destroy the web of life and fate by destroying the spider totem, Russell explained. Therefore, Chthon created the vampire totem and the heirs, and cursed them, forcing them to destroy Spider-Man. The white-bearded Ancient One nodded. "That's right, that's what I guessed too. As for why it was coercion rather than enticement? What enticement could compare to the coercion of annihilating an entire race?" Russell pondered. "So, if I destroy the heirs, wouldn't I inadvertently help Chthon complete his curse? Wouldn't he give me a reward?" The Ancient One, white-bearded, trembled with anger. "A reward? Revenge is more like it. Whether you're Spider-Man or not, Russell, don't you know? Even if you really are Spider-Man, Chthon won't be grateful." Russell retorted, dissatisfied. "Of course I'm Spider-Man. Although I've never been bitten by a spider, don't have spider sense, and can't shoot webs, I am Spider-Man, the genuine sorcerer Spider-Man. As for whether Chthon is grateful, that's unimportant, I'll acknowledge it." The Ancient One's eyelid twitched, surprised. "Russell, you're not planning to cause trouble for Chthon, are you?" Russell smiled confidently. "I've got the heirs in my grasp. Even the god of the underworld, Chthon, can't stop them. I said it. As for whether Chthon will cause me trouble or I will cause Chthon trouble, that will be decided in 5 months. Panel upgrade." The Ancient One, with white beard, remained silent for a moment before adding, "After being banished from the real world, Sithin created a dimension. By chance, he was imprisoned within his own domain, unable to move easily. Normally, Russell, you don't need to worry about his retaliation. What about the unusual situations, Mage?" Russell asked. The Ancient One listed them one by one. Mephisto, Dormammu, the Blood God. Many dimensional lords have borrowed power from Sithin. Even Scarlet Witch. She might attack you under the influence of the Dark Book. Russell frowned. The Ancient One specifically emphasized Scarlet Witch, naturally not referring to the naive apprentice mage Wanda on Earth 404. Rather, it was the mature multidimensional Wanda from Earth 616. Earth 199,999, or other parallel universes. That would indeed be quite troublesome. But, Master, don't try to fool me. If Sithin could command these people, what would heirs need the heirs family for? Whitebird, the Ancient One, felt she had one around and smiled, asking Russell, isn't this the unusual situation you asked about yourself? Russell's face darkened, and he said nothing more. At this moment, on the mirror image spell, Morin was in action. Through a complex ritual, Morin successfully opened a portal and stepped inside. Back on Earth 001, the heirs family's headquarters. This was a castle nestled deep in the mountains. Most of the houses in the castle had their doors tightly shut. Looking through the cracks in the doors and windows, there was no light at all. It was pitch black. Clearly, the owners of the rooms had gone out and had not returned. In the castle hall, candlelight flickered, illuminating two figures. And, hanging on the walls, were countless Spider-Man specimens. The Spider-Man of prophecy has appeared, Father. Morin spoke first, and the other figure he called Father was undoubtedly Sorwas, the patriarch of the heirs family. A prophecy, Sorwas frowned upon hearing this word. If the heirs were the inescapable shadow hanging over Spider-Man, then this ancient prophecy was the sword of Damocles suspended above them. Tell me what happened during this operation, Sorwas commanded, his tone heavy. Moron began his account. I gained nothing in the previous universes. But on Earth 65, I successfully hunted down 5 Spider-Men and absorbed their spider totem power. After absorbing their power, I encountered a powerful sorcerer Spider-Man who came to my aid. I was no match for him, he severely injured me in just a few moves. I barely escaped when he was off guard. A sorcerer Spider-Man, Sorwas exclaimed in surprise. Tell me in detail about your battle with the wizard Spider-Man. Moreland pondered for a moment before replying. He first opened a portal, and I rushed through it to get close. He stretched space, increasing the distance, so I couldn't get close immediately. Afterwards, realizing I was outmatched, I chose to flee. Hearing Moreland's account, Soros's expression grew increasingly grave. In other words, he calls himself the wizard Spider-Man, but his fighting style is entirely that of a sorcerer, showing no Spider-Man characteristics. Furthermore, your life-draining ability had no effect on him. Yes, Father. However, I did sense the aura of the spider totem on him, Moreland explained, then suggested, Father, I propose we gather all the clan members and surround and kill the wizard Spider-Man. Such a powerful Spider-Man, even if he isn't the prophesied Spider-Man, cannot be let go. Sorwas sighed deeply. As the patriarch of the heir-apparent family, he had lived a life of constant anxiety, striving for the family's survival and avoiding being ended by the prophesied Spider-Man. But that wasn't a prophecy, it was a curse. From the very origin of their origins, the curse of the god of the underworld, Chthon. A sorcerer disguised as Spider-Man. How could Soros not understand Chthon's implication? Chthon was the source of dark magic. He was sending someone towards their heir family to speed up their hunt for Spider-Man. Soros shook his head, rejecting Moreland's suggestion. If he really is the prophesied Spider-Man, gathering the family members to kill him would only lead to certain death. Bang! Why, Father? Moreland was agitated, slamming his fist on the table and questioning Soros. Have you grown old, afraid, and unable to face a powerful enemy? If we don't kill the sorcerer Spider-Man, our family will never have peace, fool. Sit down, Soros roared. You think a prophecy can make me believe it without a doubt? First, to travel to Earth 000, risking everything to hunt down the Spider-Man god, the Weaver. Then to hunt Spider-Man all over the multiverse, and try every means to exterminate him. Then tell me, what's the secret here? Get your bearings, moron, Soros interrupted sharply. I am the patriarch. How the family acts and develops is up to me. It's not your place to interfere. Moron's face turned ashen, but he could only suppress his anger and obediently sit down. Neither of them spoke, and the air was deathly still for a moment. After a long silence, Soros spoke and instructed Moron, go, prepare the ceremony, contact our god, the god of vampires. This time, the sorcerer Spider-Man is a matter of life and death for the entire clan. I need to consult him. Moron remained silent, got up and left to prepare the ceremony. Earth 65. Tony, Wanda, Pietro, and the 5 Spider-Men were gathered together, waiting for Russell's news. Russell, have you tracked down the coordinates of the heir's headquarters? Finally, Wanda couldn't help but ask first. Russell nodded with a somewhat strange expression. "We've tracked them down." Pietro, reacting even faster, spoke urgently before Wanda could. "Then let's go, break into the Ayers family, and seize the cloning technology." Russell shook his head. "Wait a bit, something's come up. If it were just about the cloning technology, they could go straight for the Ayers family now. But that wouldn't allow them to wipe them out completely. Leaving a snake unkilled leaves it vulnerable to future retaliation. There's no guarantee they won't face future reprisals from the Ayers family. You can't guard against a thief forever." Russell wasn't afraid, but that didn't mean the others weren't. And there was another point. The Blood God, an old friend. Chapter 86. Russell, Blood God, it's been so long, I've missed you dearly. The Blood Dimension. The Blood God has been having a rough time lately. Some time ago, he was scammed in a universe, losing a massive amount of energy. Due to the energy shortage, he hasn't been as generous with the rewards he gives to his subordinates. More importantly, his prestige has declined. With morale low, leading an army becomes difficult. Suddenly, the Blood God sensed someone calling him through a ritual. He looked closely and saw the call came from Earth-001. Energy vampires, the Ayer family. The Blood God responded to the ritual, a wisp of consciousness carrying energy descending with a call. Earth-001. In the night sky, clouds rapidly gathered, obscuring the moon. The ancient castle, previously barely visible in moonlight, was now completely shrouded in darkness, becoming pitch black. Boom! Bolts of lightning ripped through the night sky, piercing the darkness and striking the altar. At this moment, the lightning was the only light in this world. On the altar, a body that had been lying quietly, lifeless, suddenly opened its crimson eyes. The consciousness of the Blood God had descended. "My God," Soros bowed slightly. The Blood God nodded in return. There were differences between apostles. Unlike a piece of trash like Deacon Florister, Soros, the patriarch of the Ayers family, had once defeated the Spider Totem God, the Weaver Master. Even the Blood God could not treat him lightly. "My apostle, what brings you to my attention?" Soros did not hesitate to tell the Blood God his guesses. "Sidon, you've gone too far." Upon hearing Soros's words, the Blood God was furious. Although Sidon was his source, although Sidon had provided great assistance when he sought to seize the Blood Dimension, although, hadn't Sidon heard the saying, "The vassal of my vassal is not my vassal"? Of course, if Sidon were freed, it would be a different story. "My God, what should be done about the Ayers family?" Soros asked humbly. The Blood God pondered. As the Lord of the Blood Dimension, he could ignore Sithin's orders and demands when Sithin was imprisoned and unable to project his power, thus rendering him powerless. Even though Sithin was his source and greatest creditor, Sithin could still threaten the Ayers. The Blood God was displeased that Sithin had bypassed him and directly threatened the Ayers to do his bidding, but there was nothing he could do. Ultimately, everything depended on strength. "How about this? Your Ayers family temporarily hides in my Blood Dimension. Once you've ascertained the true nature of this Spider-Man sorcerer, you can return to the real universe." Hearing the Blood God's words, Soros was somewhat disappointed. This wasn't the answer he wanted. What he hoped for was for the Blood God to help investigate the Spider-Man sorcerer's background and see if he was connected to the god of the underworld, Sithin. Soros politely declined the Blood God's arrangement. Neither humble nor arrogant, the Ayers family has been operating on Earth-001 for many years. It's truly hard to leave our homeland. Once you go to the Blood Dimension, it's hard to say whether the Ayers family will be the family that succeeds him as the patriarch, or the family that succeeds the Blood God. The Blood God's face darkened. "What do you mean by homesickness? There are hardly any people left in your castle. Everyone else is wandering in other universes, hunting Spider-Man." "Soros, what are your plans?" Soros shamelessly replied. "I hope my God can descend and help the Ayers family overcome this difficulty." The Blood God's face darkened even more. Was he being taken advantage of? "Soros, sacrifice is also a kind of transaction. Your offering is not enough for me to invest enough resources to help fight that sorcerer Spider-Man. Not to mention, the one behind the sorcerer Spider-Man." Soros hesitated, unable to make a decision. The Blood God seemed to see Soros's concerns and reassured him. "My apostle, the Ayers family will always be your Ayers family. I will not interfere. In my opinion, the entire Ayers family is not as valuable as you. If you are not at ease, we can sign a contract." Having said that, the Blood God drafted the contract and handed it to Soros. The Blood God's tone was sincere, and this was his true feeling. Apart from the patriarch Soros and his two sons, Soren and Cain, the rest of the heirs were only decent warriors, hardly capable of great use. Even the promising Soren and Cain were far inferior to Soros. Soros took the contract and read it carefully. The contract was straightforward, without any wording traps. Without further hesitation, Soros chose to sign the contract. This was a historic moment. The heirs and their source, the blood god, the vampire totem god, came together again to cooperate against the sorcerer Spider-Man. After making his choice, Soros acted decisively, contacting the heirs members scattered throughout other universes and ordering them to go to the blood dimension through a ritual. Since the decision had been made to fight the sorcerer Spider-Man in his bunker, Sithin, then Earth-001 didn't need to return. Gathering together could easily lead to trouble. Earth-65, Kamartaj. Russell and Whitebird looked at each other. Master, what should we do? It's not that I don't want to give Tony and Wanda a chance to hone their skills, it's just that the heirs don't play by the rules. Whitebird Guyu was also having a headache. This Soros was too imaginative. He actually connected a sorcerer Spider-Man to Sithin. Why didn't he connect it to Kamartaj, or the Trinity of Vishanti, the founders of white magic? Did he look down on them? Whitebird Guyu gave a suggestion: you make the first move and keep Soros here. Otherwise, once he reaches the blood dimension and is strengthened by the blood god, he won't be so easy to deal with. Also, if you keep Soros here, Moron will be the acting patriarch. Then you can use Moron to gather the heirs and wipe them out in one fell swoop. Russell nodded. New York. Russell opened his eyes, stood up, and gestured to everyone. Let's go, let's set off. By the way, Gwen, you guys don't come over. Russell sensed Moron's coordinates and drew a circle with his index and middle fingers together. With a flash of sparks, a portal slowly appeared. On the other side of the portal, Soros, Moron, and Blood God's gazes instantly turned towards them. Russell led the way, followed by Tony, Wanda, and Pietro, who emerged from the portal one after another. Soros's gaze swept over the group. He paused slightly when he saw that the portal was golden instead of scarlet. Then his expression turned ugly. He had misunderstood. The wizard Spider-Man was not an apostle of Sithin. But when he saw Wanda emerge afterward, Soros's expression became strange. What was going on? The wizard Spider-Man, he is the wizard Spider-Man. Moron pointed at Russell, his expression terrified. Soros frowned. Very dissatisfied with Moron's reaction, and scolded, so what if you lost once? Why are you so panicked, flustered, and shouting like that? What kind of behavior is this? It's you. It's actually you. Blood God scrutinized Russell for a while, and also exclaimed in disbelief. Soros, my God, you know the wizard Spider-Man. Blood God gritted his teeth. Yes, of course I know him. I'd recognize him even if you were ashes. In his heart, if the Ancient One was the #1 fraudster, then Russell was a key accomplice. In some ways, his hatred for Russell was even greater. The Ancient One was an opponent of equal strength, while Russell was an insect. An insect that constantly provoked and offended him. Had he known Russell would come, he would have sent down a powerful avatar even without Soros' sacrifice. Russell also looked at the blood god and smiled slightly. Sorry, this chapter is only a little over 2,000 words. I will definitely make up for the missing 1,000 words. I'll watch the match first tonight. Please forgive me. Chapter 87 Dual Cultivation of Physical and Magical Elements, Tony's Heavenly Obstacle Star. Blood God, it's been a long time. I've missed you dearly. Since our last meeting, I haven't been able to forget your brilliance. Hearing Russell's words, the Blood God's expression turned ugly. Although he also missed Russell and the Ancient One, their feelings were completely different. That encounter with Russell and the Ancient One was not a pleasant memory for the Blood God. However, the Blood God chuckled coldly. Spider-Man the wizard? A bug is a bug, all was jumping around. Last time in Universe 404, you were protected by a magic array. This time, without the array, you won't be able to escape. Russell was unfazed by the Blood God's threat and smiled, saying, it seems the Blood God has a deep misunderstanding of me. Your first reaction upon seeing an old friend is to kill me. After thinking for a moment, Russell continued, but it's alright, I forgive you. After all, Blood God, you were my first major benefactor. Russell had a deep impression of the Blood God. He was his first major benefactor. The energy boost allowed Russell to immediately reach the second stage and, after the panel upgrade, immediately reached the third stage, saving considerable development time. Hearing Russell's words, the Blood God's expression darkened further. This was a blatant exposure of his weakness. This was intolerable. The Blood God looked at Soros. Soros, I know the Spider-Man sorcerer. His strength is indeed enough to defeat Moron, but he's no match for you. While Russell and the Blood God were catching up, Tony quietly pulled Wanda and Pietro back a few steps, shielding Russell in front of him. Wanda and Pietro, puzzled, asked, "What's wrong, Mr. Stark?" Tony gestured to the Blood God and explained, "That person is the Blood God, a dimensional lord of the same rank as Mephisto. His energy can transform people into inhuman, ghostly vampires. Be careful, when the fight breaks out, Russell might not be able to protect us, Dimensional Lord." Upon hearing Tony's explanation, Wanda and Pietro's expressions turned serious, even tense. They had spent considerable time researching Dimensional Lords recently. In Kamartaj's records, Dimensional Lords typically symbolized power, evil, and untouchability. For a moment, their gazes towards Blood God were filled with wariness. Blood God, Soros, and Moron all possessed extraordinary senses, and naturally heard Tony's words clearly. Hearing Tony say that vampires were neither human nor ghost, their expressions turned grim, and their eyes all turned to Tony. Undoubtedly, if a fight broke out, Tony would be their primary target. Tony was not afraid. He shielded Russell in front of him while protecting Wanda and Pietro behind him. He did it intentionally. Russell sighed softly, "Blood God, it's been a long time since we last met. We should have burned poetry and brew wine to reminisce about old times." "Perfect, this is your territory, Blood God. You should be a good host and unleash your power so I can have a good meal. Why are we already at each other's throats?" After just a few words, hearing Russell's words, the Blood God could no longer suppress his anger. "Kill him. Soros, as you wish, my God." Soros's voice was deep and confident. He trusted the Blood God's judgment. The Blood God had just said that the sorcerer Spider-Man could defeat Moron, but not him. As soon as he finished speaking, Soros sped up, charging towards Russell at lightning speed. Russell stood still, motionless, waiting for Soros to approach. He seemed stunned, as if he hadn't had time to react. Soros rushed in front of Russell, then suddenly veered in another direction. As the two passed each other, he threw a tentative punch. He didn't believe Russell hadn't reacted. Russell remained motionless. Just as Soros's fist was about to hit Russell, bang! A palm strike sent Soros flying. It was Tony. He had stopped Soros. King against king, general against general. Tony hoped Russell could focus entirely on the Blood God without being distracted by Soros's threat. Tony didn't realize that the Blood God was just an empty shell, all show and no substance. "Jarvis, help capture Soros's movements and assist with evasion." Soros was incredibly fast. If he got close, Tony wasn't confident he could react in time. "But, he have Jarvis." "Yes, sir." On the other side, Soros rolled twice before landing. Although he looked somewhat disheveled, he was completely unharmed. Looking at Tony, who was already dressed in his suit, Soros asked, "Iron Man, inside the suit?" Tony raised an eyebrow. "Looks like you've seen other Iron Men in other parallel universes," Soros said coldly. "I've not only seen other Iron Men, I've killed them, more than one." "That's because you haven't met me yet." Along with Tony's voice, a small missile responded to Soros. Soros dodged it easily. Seeing out of the corner of his eye that the missiles didn't turn back to pursue him, Soros scoffed. "Looks like you, Iron Man, are no match for me killing those, is that so?" The Iron Man suit opened its shoulder, firing a dozen missiles in quick succession. Soros dodged them all. Simultaneously, he charged towards Tony. Tony's Iron Man suit summoned the red ring of Lagarter from his fist, meeting Soros's attack head-on. Why Tony didn't choose to fly up and kite Soros was a mystery to him. Soon, Tony, clad in his Iron Man suit, was locked in close combat with Soros's flesh and blood. As expected, Soros's physical strength easily overwhelmed Tony's Iron Man suit, gaining the upper hand. After a dozen or so rounds, Soros, taking advantage of Tony's struggles to parry his attacks, kicked the Iron Man suit on the waist, sending Tony flying. Taking advantage of Tony's unsteady stance after the fall, Soros followed up with another fierce attack. This Iron Man was better at close combat and had better reflexes than the ones he had encountered before. However, the weapons on his suit were too poor. The missiles he fired didn't even have auto-tracking capabilities. Seeing Tony being overwhelmed, Wanda and Pietro couldn't help but rush to help. Pietro summoned the sacred sword of Vishanti, wielding the longsword, and charged forward. In an instant, space-time around Pietro distorted, and the flow of time slowed down. In a flash, Pietro used the sacred sword of Vishanti to launch dozens of attacks on Soros. But he could only slash the surface, unable to truly tear through muscle and bone, causing substantial damage. The difference in physical strength between Pietro and Soros was too great. Whoosh! Pietro stopped and returned to Wanda's side. Looking at Soros, whose skin had been slashed and hadn't even had time to bleed before it rapidly healed, Pietro was filled with disbelief. Seeing Pietro's fruitless attempt, Wanda gathered magic in her hands, preparing to take action. Soros glanced at Pietro and sneered, "I was careless just now, I didn't dodge. But don't think you're invincible just because you're fast, you coward. Your attacks were weak and feeble, were you just tickling me?" Hearing this, Pietro snapped angrily. Russell pulled Pietro back, saying meaningfully, "Trust Tony?" Pietro and Wanda looked at Russell with suspicion. They had clearly seen that Tony was at a disadvantage, being overwhelmed by Soros and barely managing to parry. How could Russell make it sound like Tony had the upper hand? Russell didn't explain, but instead pulled the two back a bit, indicating that he wanted to give Tony and Soros space. Although Pietro and Wanda were confused, out of trust and respect for Russell, they chose to believe him and left the battlefield. Soros, however, didn't share the trust and respect with Russell. While secretly on guard, he scoffed, "Trust Tony? I believe he'll be dead in no time. Then it'll be your turn." Although Pietro's attack didn't cause any real damage to Soros, it bought Tony time. Taking advantage of this opening, Tony manipulated his suit to regain balance. Inside the suit, Tony heard Russell's words, and his expression changed slightly. How did Russell discover my plan? But that's normal, his perception range is terrifyingly far. Calming his thoughts, Tony focused on the battle before him. Soros was indeed a formidable opponent. Strength, close range speed, and reaction time were all superior to his own, even with the Iron Man suit. But he had a trump card. A trump card that could decide the outcome. "Sir, the probe we just launched has successfully detected a meteorite in Earth's near-space orbit." Jarvis's voice sounded from inside the suit. Tony's lips curled into a smile. "Jarvis, calculate the coordinates in real time." "Yes, sir." On the front lines, Tony was already locked in combat with Soros again. Just as Soros was relentlessly attacking the Iron Man suit, inflicting damage on Tony, Tony was waiting for an opportunity, a chance to send Soros to his wrath. Soon, that opportunity presented itself. Tony manipulated the Iron Man suit, unleashing a sudden energy surge that knocked the unsuspecting Soros back. Spell, Crimson Chains of Satorak. A crimson chain seized the opportunity to bind Soros. Before Soros could react, Tony propelled the Iron Man suit into the sky. No matter how strong Soros was, his mass was only around 100 kilograms. Under the laws of physics, Soros was lifted into the air by Tony, losing his footing. Spell, Form of Ekron. Countless copies of Iron Man appeared, circling Soros in the sky. They also summoned Crimson Chains to bind Soros. Soros used the Crimson Chains for leverage, struggling desperately. With his superior strength, he broke free from the Crimson Chains one by one. But complete escape would take time. Even after escaping, the free fall to the ground would take time. "This time is enough." Inside his suit, Tony spoke to Soros for the first time since the battle officially began. "I told you, that's because you hadn't met me before." Before Soros could reply, a massive portal appeared before Tony. On the other side of the portal was a rapidly approaching meteorite. The portal was pointing directly at Soros. This was a fusion of technology and magic. A celestial meteor from Iron Man Tony Stark. Chapter 88 Cloning Technology. A meteorite, approximately 10 meters in diameter and traveling at over Mach 50, hurtled out of the portal. The next instant, it struck Soros from above. This meteorite, suddenly appearing in Earth's atmosphere from outer space, carrying Soros, hurtled towards the ground at nearly 20,000 meters per second. Boom. The moment the meteorite struck the ground, its kinetic energy converted into internal energy, causing a massive explosion. First came a blinding flash of light, then a shock wave, and finally a deafening roar. These three forces swept outwards in succession, destroying everything in their path. Russell shielded Wanda and Pietro. He raised his hand, and a seraphim shield blocked the entire shockwave. As for Tony, he had already flown diagonally upwards at high speed when the meteorite emerged from the portal, successfully avoiding the explosion and shockwave from the impact. After a long while, the shockwave subsided. A crater 100 meters deep remained where the meteorite struck. The ancient forest near the castle was completely destroyed. Tony piloted his Iron Man suit, swooping down from the sky towards the crater. He needed to check on Soros's condition. During the Sakura Island incident, the sea god of the Sakura Island pantheon had survived the impact of the meteor summoned by Russell. Tony wasn't sure if Soros could do the same. Soon, Tony arrived at the bottom of the crater. The temperature at the bottom was extremely high. The air itself was distorted by the intense heat. Tony surveyed the area but couldn't find Soros. No need to look anymore. Soros's body is completely gone. Russell's voice came from behind Tony. Along with the voice came a chill. Jarvis, what's the temperature outside? 23 degrees Celsius, sir. Open the suit. The suit opened, and Tony stepped out. So, Soros is dead. Russell raised his hand, a phantom of a soul in his palm. More or less, just a soul. Looking at Soros's weak, unconscious soul, Tony nodded, satisfied with his handiwork. Pietro, unable to contain his excitement, asked, Mr. Stark, how did you do that? Tony smiled confidently and explained, remember those missiles I launched at the beginning? They weren't actually missiles, but probes. They were disguised as missiles to deceive the enemy. After they were launched, they would travel into Earth's orbit in outer space to search for the nearest meteorite. Once they found a meteorite, they would track it and send its coordinates back in real time. Pietro asked doubtfully, but what if you can't find a meteorite? Tony was silent for a moment, then asked quietly, Pietro, do you know how many meteorites enter Earth's atmosphere every day? Pietro shook his head in confusion. Wanda and I haven't been to school since we were 10. So we don't know anything about this kind of science. Tony was silent. So, this was my fault? After a moment of silence, Tony patiently explained, tens of thousands of meteorites enter the atmosphere every day. It's almost impossible not to find one. It's just that only a very small number of large meteorites actually hit the ground. Most meteorites burn up and disintegrate upon entering the atmosphere. Pietro nodded thoughtfully. So, does that mean Wanda and I can also use a portal to attack with meteorites? Tony nodded. Yes. Whether through technological means or mental perception. As long as we can accurately locate a meteorite in outer space and open a portal in front of its flight path, we can attack with it. Pietro shook his head. He couldn't meet either of those prerequisites. Seeing Pietro fall silent, Tony asked Russell, where are Moron and Blood God? Where did they go? They ran away. They ran away when Soros was hit by the meteorite you summoned, Russell replied. Ran away? Tony asked, puzzled. Did Blood God say he was going to kill you? Why did he run away? Russell explained, just like last time, Blood God didn't descend in his true form this time. It was just a consciousness, with no real combat power. Now that Soros has been defeated, he naturally ran away. Tony asked, do you know where their laboratory is? Wanda and Pietro also looked intently at Russell. They hadn't forgotten that their primary task was to obtain the heir's cloning technology. Russell nodded, wait for me a moment. After locking onto the coordinates of Earth 001, finding the heir's laboratory was a piece of cake for Russell. His mental energy swept across, instantly covering the entire Earth 001. Skipping most areas, Russell focused on detecting places where the heir's aura was strong. Soon, Russell found the heir's laboratory. Follow me. As soon as he finished speaking, Russell raised his hand and drew a portal. Knowing that Wanda and Pietro were anxious, Russell didn't play any tricks this time. Passing through the portal, the group appeared in an empty laboratory. Around the laboratory were several transparent incubation chambers. Inside the incubation chambers were the spare bodies of the heirs members. Soros and Moron were among them. It's all up to you now, Tony, Russell told Tony, then found a corner, put down his rocking chair, and went to sleep. Okay, Tony nodded. Tony then communicated with Jarvis, devising a plan to infiltrate the lab's control center. At this moment, they were still in the mirror space. Once they left, the lab's sensors might detect the intrusion. Sure enough, when Tony finished formulating the plan and left the mirror space, a sharp alarm suddenly rang out, shattering the lab's silence. The red emergency indicator light instantly illuminated, bathing the entire lab in a blinding red glow. Tony quickly went to the control panel and inserted a USB drive. Then, his fingers flew across the screen, continuously inputting commands. As streams of data flowed across the display screen, the alarm disappeared after a moment. In its place was a synthesized electronic voice. "Sir, control of the lab has been gained. Data copying is in progress." Estimated time, 21 minutes. Russell watched all this, finding it quite unbelievable. Before his transmigration, he had some basic programming knowledge. But compared to Tony, he's completely incomparable. Like a frog in a well looking at the moon. As for why it's not a mayfly seeing the blue sky? Probably because Russell's programming knowledge isn't even at the beginner level. It's not much different from knowing nothing at all. Ignoring the situation in the lab, Russell turned his attention to Moron. The Blood God and Moron were able to escape because Russell deliberately let them go. Russell had two plans. Plan 1, use Moron to gather the members of the Air family and wipe them out in one fell swoop. Plan 2, use Moron to find the Blood God's blood dimension coordinates. Then let the Blood God experience the treatment of Mephisto. I feel like ending here is a good idea. Or, since this chapter is 2,000 words, I should write another 2,000-word chapter. And maybe I can make up for the 1,000 words I owed yesterday? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89: The Wizard Spider-Man, Righteousness. Contrary to Russell's expectations, Moron and the Blood God did not immediately flee back to the blood dimension. Instead, they went to another cloning base of the Heirs family. Inside the base, Moron saw that Soros's spare body was unresponsive, so he began operating the instruments. After a long time, he still couldn't detect any soul fluctuations from Soros. Moron grew increasingly panicked and unsettled. Helpless, he could only turn to the Blood God for help. "My God, why hasn't my father's soul returned?" the Blood God said in a deep voice. "Your father's soul was taken by the sorcerer Spider-Man." The Blood God was also deeply saddened. A powerful subordinate he had just subdued was gone just like that. Moron humbly pleaded, "My God, can you help me retrieve my father's soul?" The Blood God nodded. "Don't worry, I won't abandon your father." Although Soros's defeat was sudden, the combat power he displayed still satisfied the Blood God considerably. In the Blood God's view, Soros's defeat was not his fault. A sudden, high-speed meteorite was not something a normal carbon-based life form could withstand. Unless Soros is strengthened by him and transformed into a vampire with the characteristics of an energy body, he wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of the meteorite. "What should we do now, my God?" Moron asked cautiously. The Blood God didn't mince words, instructing, "I can sense that Soros's soul is still in this universe. Find a way to contact the other members of the Heirs family and have them go to the blood dimension to receive my strengthening. Afterwards, my avatar will lead them to descend upon this universe to defeat the sorcerer Spider-Man, as you command, my God." Moron dared not disobey the Blood God and immediately sent another message to the members of the Heirs family, informing them of Soros's defeat and the family's impending annihilation. He also ordered the others to immediately abandon their current affairs and go to the blood dimension to pay homage to the Blood God. Seeing Moron's obedience, the Blood God smiled with satisfaction. "Moron, you too should go to the blood dimension to strengthen yourself." In fact, in the Blood God's plan, the main force to rescue Soros's soul was only one, his avatar. As for converting the other members of the Heirs family into vampires, that was a matter of convenience. As for the promise to Soros, times change. Once he reclaims Soros's soul, he'll tamper with it further. Even Soros will be his now. Through a mysterious magic circle and a period of teleportation, Morlun arrived in the blood dimension, with Russell's gaze. Russell saw it from Morlun's perspective. The blood dimension was entirely crimson. A blood moon hung in the sky, casting crimson light. Soon, Morlun arrived at the Blood God's palace. The Blood God's palace spanned the entire mountain range, exuding a distinctly vampire style. Clearly, even as the Dimensional Lord, the Blood God hadn't forgotten his origins, the god of vampire totems. Inside the Blood God's palace, the other members of the Heirs family were already gathered. The Blood God's ethereal voice descended from the heavens. My apostles, do you crave power? The inheritors knelt on one knee, clenched their chests, and bowed their heads, saying, My God, please grant us power. Convert to the Blood Clan. The Blood God's voice rang out. Convert to the Blood Clan, the inheritors repeated. Convert to the Blood Dimension. Convert to the Blood Dimension. Convert to the Blood God. Convert to the Blood God. After 3 declarations of conversion, the blood moon in the high heavens shone brightly. The crimson moonlight condensed into a pillar of blood, enveloping the inheritors in the palace. Within the pillar of blood, the inheritors' bodies and souls underwent a transformation. The various totem powers that the inheritors had absorbed began to dissolve under the power of the Blood God, eventually merging into a special crimson energy, primarily based on the power of the Blood Clan. Suddenly, the blood moon in the high heavens opened its eyes. Its eyes revealed surprise. It had guessed correctly, the inheritors' power was the most compatible with its own. In the Blood God's perception, the aura of each member of the inheritors was increasing exponentially. Molan, whose strength was previously far inferior to Soros, had grown to nearly Soros's level. The other inheritors had also strengthened to a level approaching Molan's former strength. With such a squad of inheritors submitting to him, the Blood God felt that his rule in the Blood Dimension could be further consolidated. A moment later, the strengthening ended. The inheritors prostrated themselves on the ground, shouting with heartfelt submission, I submit to the Blood Clan, I submit to the Blood Dimension, I submit to the Blood God. After 3 declarations of submission, the inheritors' tone changed. It became fierce, filled with malevolence. Kill the Spider-Man. Rescue the clan chief, the Blood God responded to his apostle. Kill the Spider-Man. Rescue Soros, rumble. The earth trembled. Suddenly, the entire mountain range rose from the ground. This was clearly an avatar of the Blood God. The original palace became mere decorations on the avatar's armor. Boom. Emerging from the Blood Dimension, the Blood God headed towards the direction of Soros's soul aura. Just as the inheritors suddenly left the real universe, Miguel of the Spider-Man Alliance also noticed the anomaly. Although he didn't understand what was happening or what had occurred, Miguel keenly sensed that it must be related to a certain Spider-Man. Miguel quickly contacted the Captain Spider-Man on Earth 13. This was the strongest Spider-Man he knew. No. He then contacted the Spider-Man from Toei Animation. No. Finally, he contacted a ghost Spider-Man, a friend of the wizard Spider-Man. So, some time ago on Earth 65, you ambushed Molan of the Inheritors family. The wizard Spider-Man defeated Molan and controlled him. He wanted to use Molan to gather members of the Inheritors family to besiege him. And then, he would wipe out the entire Inheritors family. Miguel's voice betrayed disbelief. Even the strongest Spider-Man in his knowledge, Captain Spider-Man, had only protected Spider-Man who had fled to Earth 13 from being hunted by the heirs. He had never considered taking the initiative to eliminate the heirs. Sorcerer Spider-Man, so righteous. After his reflection, Miguel told Gwen in Spider-Man English the news he had just received. The heirs have left from various universes, and their whereabouts are currently unknown. They have likely gathered to hunt down Sorcerer Spider-Man. We must go and support Sorcerer Spider-Man. We can't let him fight alone, okay? Spider-Man English, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Man Peony, and Spider-Ham nodded emphatically. Alright, Gwen also nodded. She knew Russell's strength and had great confidence in him. But seeing how passionately Miguel and the others were speaking, she didn't want to spoil the atmosphere. Chapter 90 The Blood God Strikes. Earth 001, the Heirs Family Laboratory. Just as Moran arrived in the Blood Dimension, Jarvis had successfully copied the cloning technology and various experimental data. Russell, however, remained calmly reclining in his rocking chair, eyes closed as if dozing, showing no intention of leaving. Tony, Wanda, and Pietro were puzzled. Sensing their questioning gazes, Russell explained, wait a little longer, until the Blood God brings the rest of the Heirs family to us. The Heirs cloning technology has a backdoor, we can't just use it directly. Tony's testing is one layer of insurance, annihilating the Heirs family is another. Tony frowned, I know this cloning technology has problems. But staying here, waiting for the Blood God and the Heirs family to arrive, isn't that too risky? My suit and ammunition were damaged in the previous battle with Soros and need repair. Otherwise, I won't be able to fight at full strength in the upcoming battle. I suggest returning to Earth 404 to fight. Only there can I unleash my full power. Returning to Earth 404 would allow Tony to unleash his full power? Russell pondered for a moment, then understood. On Earth 001, Tony needed to launch probes into Earth's orbit to search for the meteorite, a step that would take time. But on Earth 404, with Stark Industries satellites dotting the sky, this step could be skipped. However, Russell shook his head. On Earth 404, with 3 sanctums protecting it and the Ancient One in charge, the Blood God most likely wouldn't dare come. Don't worry, it's just a Blood God. Once we leave the Blood Dimension, I'm 98% confident I can handle him. After reassuring the 3, Russell opened a portal with a thought, leading directly to the Stark Industries building on Earth 404. Here, Tony, you can repair your suit and replenish your ammunition now. However, you need to speed things up. The Blood God will arrive here in about an hour. Tony breathed a sigh of relief and nodded in agreement with Russell's decision. Since Russell's portal could open directly to Stark Tower, it could also open to Kamartaj. If things went wrong, they could retreat or call for reinforcements. In the super cyclone, Blood God stirred up ripples as it sped towards Earth 001. In the multiverse, the Spider-Men of the Spider League were also gathering. They prepared to teleport to Earth 001 via the web of life and fate. As for why Blood God didn't use a portal, he was probably too inexperienced. Portal magic sounds complicated, but it's actually even more difficult. Ultimately, Blood God, having traveled arduously on his own, arrived first. Like a stone thrown into a lake, Blood God's arrival caused ripples in the surrounding space-time. Without Russell's prompting, Tony, Wanda, and Pietro noticed Blood God. A colossal body, hundreds of thousands of meters tall, standing upright like a mountain range, towering into the sky. It was impossible for the 3 of them not to notice him. "This is the Blood God?" Tony asked incredulously. Such a massive body, even on Earth 404, wouldn't be easily destroyed with his newly developed ultimate technique, the Celestial Meteor Strike. Russell calmly replied, "About the same size as the beast. It's probably not the main body, just an avatar." Russell had discovered this when he killed the beast. The beast's main body died when its dimension was breached, leaving behind 2 avatars, one large and one small, and a dimensional fragment. "And this is just an avatar," Wanda exclaimed. She was now worried about whether the Ancient One could truly help her retrieve her parents' souls. Hundreds of kilometers apart, Russell and the Blood God's eyes met. Both eyes held the same confidence and mockery. The Blood God spoke first. "Spider-Man, I told you before, you couldn't escape." Russell chuckled. "Blood God, I never intended to run. I've been looking forward to this reunion with an old friend for a long time." "Sharp-tongued, you bug, die?" The Blood God said no more. A beam of crimson energy shot from his eyes, heading straight for Russell. The crimson beam descended diagonally from the upper side, tearing apart the clouds and moisture in its path. Russell raised one hand. His talent, energy absorption, activated. The originally thick crimson beam rapidly shrank as it approached, finally disappearing entirely into Russell's palm. Everything around Russell remained unaffected. It was as if the enormous crimson energy beam was merely an illusion. The Blood God's pupils contracted, somewhat surprised by Russell's method of neutralizing his attack. Taking advantage of the Blood God's momentary daze, Russell's gaze quickly swept over them. Just like the information obtained from Warren, the Blood God brought the entire Enhanced Air family. The Ancient One and I underestimated Tony's strength before. I wonder if Tony can bring any more surprises this time. And Wanda, hopefully she can also gain something in this battle. Russell planned to take a break while fighting the Blood God and observe Tony and Wanda carefully. As for Pietro, he was just a side effect. Having made up his mind, Russell spoke. "My battle with the Blood God isn't suitable for Earth, otherwise it would completely destroy the planet's ecosystem. I'll find a way to take him away from Earth later. The rest of the heirs are in your hands." Noticing Wanda and Pietro's nervousness, Russell reassured them, "Don't be afraid, I'm here. Even if you accidentally die in battle, I will resurrect you." Wanda and Pietro's foreheads creased. They thought Russell meant he would take care of them. However, after Russell's interruption, they weren't so nervous anymore. Seeing this, Russell flew towards the Blood God. Along the way, Russell continuously released divine power, forming an energy body that kept expanding. Soon, it expanded to 10,000 meters, then 100,000 meters, finally stopping when it was a head taller than the Blood God. Russell looked down at the Blood God and asked, "Fighting in space?" The Blood God snorted coldly in anger and flew towards outer space first. Earth 001 is the stronghold of the Inheritors families. and the Blood God doesn't want to destroy it. Russell followed the Blood God, deliberately flying alongside him. Turning his head, he looked down at the Blood God as he flew. Russell really couldn't understand why the avatars of these dimensional lords, beasts, the Blood God, were all so large. Was size useful? Only toughness mattered. Despite the Blood God's large avatar, its body's toughness was far inferior to Russell's. However, if Russell fought with his true form, he wouldn't be able to hold back. That's why he condensed an energy body to play with the Blood God. Seeing Russell and the Blood God leave, the inheritors below began to stir. The inheritors didn't have the ability to detect Tony and the others from hundreds of kilometers away. But the Blood God's energy beam had just pointed them in the right direction. This chapter is 2,000 words, the daily word count won't be less. Chapter 91 The Spider-Men Who Arrive Late. Just as the heirs were heading towards Tony and his companions, the three of them weren't idle either. Tony tossed two communicators to Wanda and Pietro, indicating they should wear them for communication during the battle. Then, Tony began explaining the tactics to Wanda and Pietro. Jarvis, retrieve the map. We can use a portal to get to this forest between the two locations first. From here, we can ambush them, catching the heirs family completely off guard. With that, Tony opened a portal and appeared at the forest marked on the map. Wanda and Pietro followed, asking, "What exactly do we do, Mr. Stark?" Tony first handed Pietro a box of miniature detectors, pointing in a direction and instructing, "Pietro, you're fast. Deploy these detectors along this direction, roughly one every kilometer." "Yes, Mr. Stark," Pietro nodded, taking the detectors from Tony. In a flash, Pietro vanished. A few breaths later, he returned to the same spot. Pietro took a deep breath and said, "Mission accomplished, Mr. Stark." Tony nodded and then asked, "Do you have any other ideas?" "No, that's fine, Mr. Stark," Wanda and Pietro replied. On the other side, the members of the heirs family were running towards Tony and his companions. As superhumans, their running speed had reached over 300 kilometers per hour after their enhancements. A few hundred kilometers would only take an hour or two, so there was no need to specifically seek out transportation. Morin's expression suddenly changed, as if he had remembered something, and he reminded the other family members that Iron Man, Tony Stark, has a magical spell. He can open a portal and summon a meteorite. Father was defeated by that one move. Be careful during the battle. If you see a golden circle, quickly dodge it. The other family members nodded solemnly. Although they had received the Blood God's enhancements and were brimming with confidence, the reputation of their patriarch, Soros, was still deeply ingrained in the hearts of the heirs. They didn't think they could withstand the attacks that Soros couldn't. Soon, the inheritors arrived at a forest. The forest was dense, the branches and leaves intertwined, blocking out the sunlight. Only scattered rays of sunlight could filter through the sparse foliage. As Moron traversed the forest, he noticed something amiss. Why was that patch of sunlight so bright? "Be careful." Faster than Moron's voice came a meteorite suddenly falling from the sky at dozens of times the speed of sound. Hidden by the trees and foliage, the inheritors were completely unaware of the portal that had suddenly opened in the sky. Naturally, they were also unaware of the falling meteorite. Boom. Not one meteorite, not two, not three, not four, but 6 or 7. The portal opened and closed repeatedly, and several meteorites shot out from it. The explosions and shockwaves from the meteorites hitting the ground completely destroyed the dense forest, including the inheritors within it. Dozens of kilometers away, Wanda erected an energy barrier, shielding the group from the surging dust and impact. Looking at the hellish scene before her, and the fact that the heirs were nowhere to be seen in the crater, Wanda made a silent vow. Magic must be powerful and overwhelming. Once the aftershocks had almost subsided, Tony said, "Let's go check it out." He then led the way towards the explosion's epicenter. Also heading towards the epicenter were another group, the belated Spider-Men. They too had been drawn by the sound of the explosion and were rushing towards the center. Unlike the heirs, the Spider-Men had brought a flying vehicle. When the Spider-Men arrived, this was the scene they saw, a colossal crater composed of 7 meteorite craters. At the edge of the crater stood a man and a woman. Inside the crater, Iron Man, in his suit, was surveying the area. "Wow, it's Iron Man. They're allies. In the multiverse, many universes have both Spider-Man and Iron Man." These Spider-Men from universes with Iron Man immediately recognized Tony's suit. "Hi, Wanda, Pietro, Gwen stepped forward, greeting the two, then asked, "What happened here? Why are there so many meteorite craters?" Hearing Gwen's question, the other Spider-Men perked up their ears. They were also very curious. Wanda explained, "After we and Russell arrived on Earth, we encountered Sorwas, the patriarch of the Heirs family, and Blood God. Tony defeated Sorwas, and Moron and Blood God escaped. Iron Man defeated Sorwas." Several low exclamations rang out among the Spider-Men. The Spider-Men who exclaimed exchanged glances, huddled together, and whispered among themselves. "Is Iron Man in your world that powerful? That's Sorwas, after all. No, the Iron Man I know can't even beat me, let alone Sorwas." Wanda continued, "Afterwards, we waited here for the Blood God and the Heirs to arrive, preparing to wipe out the Heirs in one fell swoop." Hearing Wanda's words, Miguel clenched his fist. Just as he thought. The Sorcerer Spider-Man, so righteous. Gwen then asked, "What about Russell? Why isn't he here?" Russell, this unconventional name, is the Sorcerer Spider-Man. The other Spider-Men already knew this. Wanda continued, "The Blood God sent an avatar, and Russell and the Blood God went to outer space to fight. They're not suited to fight on Earth. And Tony and we came here to ambush the other members of the Heirs. This crater is Tony's doing. He summoned a meteorite to hit this place." Summon a meteorite, another exclamation came from among the Spider-Men. No wonder Iron Man was able to defeat Sorwas. That makes sense, that makes sense. Inside the Iron Man suit, Tony listened to the Spider-Men's praise and felt quite smug. These Spider-Men are actually pretty nice. I wonder if there's a Spider-Man on Earth 404? Russell? Tony doesn't believe he's some kind of sorcerer Spider-Man. Tony doesn't believe it, but the Blood God says he does. In the void of space, the Blood God and Russell each occupied a side, temporarily ceasing their fight. The reason for the cessation was naturally because of what happened on Earth. The Blood God never expected that the Heir family he had placed so much hope in would be gone just like that. However, as long as their souls are intact, it's alright. Turning his gaze from Earth, the Blood God looked at Russell's slightly dimmed energy body. He said confidently, "Sorcerer Spider-Man, this time, you won't escape." Chapter 92 Russell, O Light, Grand Strength. Upon hearing the words specially transmitted by the Blood God through the portal, Russell's expression turned somewhat strange. "Blood God, could you have chosen a different line? This is the third time you've said that." "I'll answer you again, I never intended to escape," the Blood God sneered. "Look at your energy body, it's already so dim. Your divine power is about to be exhausted, isn't it? You're about to die, and you're still being stubborn." A worm is indeed a worm, divine power depleted. Russell glanced at his energy body. A sudden realization dawned on him. In fact, this energy body was merely a toy Russell used to play with the Blood God. Russell had been so engrossed in having fun that he hadn't noticed the severe depletion of his divine power. However, unlike the energy points on the character panel, Russell's own divine power could be replenished by absorbing physical energy. In combat within the real universe, he almost never had to worry about running out of divine power. It was precisely because of this characteristic that divine power could be replenished through physical energy that Russell was so bothered by the fact that his talent, energy absorption, could absorb divine power. If the talent, energy absorption, could absorb divine power, then Russell could exploit a bug. He could absorb and convert physical energy into attribute points at a speed comparable to absorbing and converting magical energy. Russell controlled his energy body, opened his arms, and faced the sun. "Light, grant me power." As Russell's cry fell, a pillar of sunlight composed of light and heat shot towards him. Under the Blood God's shocked gaze, Russell's previously ethereal and slightly dim energy body rapidly solidified. Not only that, but armor materialized around his previously frail form. "Emperor of Light Armor, combine," the words fell. A suit of armor materialized, encasing Russell's energy body. The armor was predominantly gold, accented with silver. The Blood God stared at the drastically changed Russell, his lips twitching. He couldn't understand why the sun could grant Russell power. Boom! Just as the Blood God was stunned, a solar storm erupted from the sun, striking his body. Russell seized the opportunity, charging towards the Blood God. Russell wanted to prove that his divine power was inexhaustible. Russell and the Blood God aren't suited to fight on Earth? Why? Gwen's question interrupted the Spider-Man's praise of Tony, diverting their attention. Wanda answered earnestly, "Because, it's too big, The Spider-Men were puzzled by this answer. Just then, Tony flew over, bringing a display screen. No one knew how Tony operated it, but the screen showed footage of Russell fighting Blood God. Wow, what cool armor! Is this the Wizard Spider-Man? But what does this have to do with Big? The Spider-Man bombarded the crucial question. Tony pointed to a string of numbers on the screen. These are their height data: ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. My God, 920,000 meters, Penny Spider-Man exclaimed. Thanks to her Spider-Man suit, she had always been the largest Spider-Man, except for Leo Parker. She never expected that the Wizard Spider-Man would now be so much bigger than her. After the initial shock, Penny Spider-Man asked, how did the Wizard Spider-Man and Blood God overcome the square cube law? What is the square cube law? A certain handsome boy who hadn't been to school since the age of 10 asked. Tony explained, when an object undergoes a proportional increase in size, its volume increases cubically, and its surface area increases squarely. The strength of any material is finite, simply scaling it up would definitely break it. Muscles and skin are also subject to the square cubic law. Clearly, Blood God and Wizard Spider-Man are not purely flesh and blood bodies at this moment, but energy bodies. Only in this way can we explain why they are so huge yet still fight so nimbly. After listening to Tony's explanation, Pietro nodded thoughtfully. I see. At this moment, Tony made up his mind. After finishing the matter of resurrecting Wanda and Pietro's parents, he would definitely hire a tutor for the two siblings. Go Wizard Spider-Man! A cheer erupted. On the screen, Russell, having absorbed stellar energy to restore his divine power and focused on fighting the Blood God, was now steadily defeating him. Now, separated again, Russell was about to unleash his ultimate attack. Russell raised his hand, and the sacred sword of Vishanti, formed from pure solar energy, appeared. Holding the sacred sword of Vishanti, Russell declared righteously, Blood God, prepare to die. Darkness can never defeat light. As the words fell, he pointed his longsword at the Blood God. Boom! No sound came from the void, but the Blood God felt as if he heard a thunderous roar. The next instant, a huge pillar of solar energy shot towards the Blood God at the speed of light. The Blood God's figure flashed, about to dodge. Swoosh! But somehow, Russell had already rushed in front of him, piercing through his chest with his sword. And, pushing the Blood God, he charged towards the pillar of solar energy. The Blood God struggled desperately, his fists constantly pounding on Russell's energy body. But they all hit the energy shield, unable to have any effect on Russell. It was the Seraphim Shield. The Seraphim Shield, also released with pure solar energy. Hundreds of seconds later, the huge pillar of solar energy finally arrived. Boom! Instantly, it engulfed the two figures. Under the terrifying light and heat radiation of the solar pillar, the scarlet energy in the Blood God's body kept falling off. Then it mysteriously disappeared. Russell, pushing the Blood God, continued to charge towards the sun. Amidst the shocked gazes of numerous Spider-Men watching on screen, the Sorcerer Spider-Man and Blood God plummeted into the sun. The scene was truly terrifying. But in reality, the sun's surface temperature was less than 6,000 degrees Celsius. For Blood God and Russell, it was negligible, far less than the nearly 1 million degrees Celsius of the corona. Under Russell's impact, the two continued their descent, steadily heading towards the sun's center. The surrounding temperature continued to rise. First, they passed through the troposphere, then the radiation zone, finally reaching the solar core. Here, thermonuclear reactions were constantly occurring, releasing massive amounts of physical energy. Upon reaching the solar core, Russell fully activated his talent, controlling the surrounding energy. The Emperor armor on his energy body was now almost tangible. Russell's aura grew increasingly powerful. Blood God, on the other hand, had to use his energy to desperately resist the surrounding environment. The high temperature and the energy released by thermonuclear fusion constantly assaulted him. With this ebb and flow, Blood God was no match for Russell. Russell slightly modified Blood God's words and returned them to him. Blood God, look at your body, it's already so dilapidated. Is its energy about to run out? Chapter 93 Bertrand Russell, I have a dream. Hearing Russell almost return the favor, the Blood God's face darkened. But he didn't refute, the battle was already decided, and stubbornness was pointless. The Blood God gave Russell a deep look, asking his name for the first time. Your name is Spider-Man the Wizard? Russell grinned, he quite liked the current Blood God. Calling him Spider-Man the Wizard so casually. Russell, Russell, is it? I'll remember you, Wizard Russell. Russell's smile froze. With a thud, he unleashed a surge of solar energy upon the blood god. Under the impact of the solar energy, the blood god ceased resisting, his figure dimming slightly. Boom. Suddenly, the blood god stopped contracting his defenses and instead unleashed his full power, blasting Russell back. The blood god looked at Russell, grinning maliciously. Wizard Russell, you defeated me using the advantages of stellar energy and the star's core environment. But have you considered that this place will also be your burial ground? Having said that, the blood god, without waiting for Russell's response, burst forth, heading towards the core of the sun. At the same time, the blood god released all its energy, striving to heat the sun's core to hundreds of millions of degrees, initiating a helium fusion reaction. Helium fusion releases a massive amount of heat, exacerbating thermal runaway. This thermal runaway reaction causes the sun to release 1,000,000 times its normal energy in just a few seconds. This is a solar helium flash. At that point, both Russell and the blood god, located at the sun's core, would be doomed. Even the entire solar system would be affected. With this avatar's defeat, the blood god no longer considered reclaiming Soros's soul. Now, it only wanted to drag Russell down with it. Everything changed in the blink of an eye. Russell saw through the blood god's intentions. Although Russell was ignorant and didn't understand the principles, he could feel the surrounding temperature rising, the thermonuclear reaction intensifying, and the energy release increasing. Ordinary people might be helpless against the blood god's mutually destructive fighting style. But Russell's talent was precisely what countered it. Blood god, since you've willingly released your energy, then I won't hold back. Talent, energy absorption, activated. Under the blood god's horrified and incredulous gaze, the energy he had willingly released, heating the star core's temperature, suddenly changed direction and flowed towards Russell. Then, like 100 rivers flowing into the sea, it vanished without a trace. The star core's temperature, which he had previously raised, also gradually decreased, returning to its initial state. The blood god stared intently at Russell. You can devour my energy, I understand. But where did it go? Why can't I sense it? The blood god wasn't unfamiliar with mages who could plunder energy. But this was the first time he had seen a situation where, after absorbing a large amount of his energy, the connection between him and the energy source was instantly severed. Russell smiled wistfully, not answering the blood god, but instead speaking to himself. I have a dream, which is to have countless amounts of energy. One day, I met someone. He recklessly wielded his power, allowing others to absorb it. I tried it myself, but after absorbing his energy, I suffered from indigestion. My mind was affected. At that time, I was thinking, if I were to encounter him again after I have become powerful enough, I would definitely devour all the energy he releases. Blood god, all encounters are reunions after a long separation. Listening to Russell reminisce about the past, the blood god seemed to return to that night. That night, when he was tricked out of nearly 300 million units of energy. He, the mighty god of vampires, the lord of the blood dimension, had never suffered such humiliation. Bang! The blood god abandoned this clone, choosing to disintegrate. And after the blood god's disintegration, the dissipated energy was absorbed by Russell one by one. He devoured it completely. Not a single drop remained. Attribute points plus 1557, 2800. After defeating the blood god, Russell dissipated his massive energy body, but retained a small imperial armor. He wasn't afraid of the star core's temperature, but his clothes were. He couldn't go out naked. Divine power condensed again, forming the imperial steed, a silver and gold-edged steed exclusive to the emperor armor. Russell mounted it and charged towards the sun. On the screen, several Spider-Men watched with either worry or anticipation. Clad in his emperor armor and riding his emperor steed, Spider-Man the Wizard, also known as Emperor Spider-Man Russell, burst forth from the fiery sun. It's Spider-Man the Wizard. Spider-Man the Wizard won. Cheers erupted. Spider-Man the Wizard is invincible. Emperor Spider-Man is invincible, a voice joined in. The other Spider-Men echoed, Spider-Man the Wizard is invincible. Emperor Spider-Man is invincible. A joyful atmosphere filled the air. The second voice undoubtedly belonged to Russell. Only he knew the title Emperor. After traveling a distance from the sun, Russell returned to Earth through a portal. The distance between the sun and Earth is approximately 500 light seconds. This meant there was at least a 500-second delay in the images on the screen. This was enough time for Russell to change his appearance and blend in with the Spider-Men. Compared to the other jubilant Spider-Men, Miguel 2099 and Spider-Man English exchanged a smile and breathed a sigh of relief. Most of the Spider-Men here only knew that the heirs had been wiped out, thus averting the crisis. But they hadn't actually had any real contact with the heirs. Or rather, most of the Spider-Men who had contacted the heirs were dead. Away from the noisy crowd, Miguel and Spider-Man English found a charred rock to sit on. Once seated, Spider-Man English spoke first. "It's unbelievable that the heirs were wiped out like that." Miguel shook his head. "No, there's still one survivor in the heirs family, Khan. He wasn't involved in this operation because he was exiled." British Spider-Man raised an eyebrow, smiling as he countered, "Can't we even handle the last heir?" Miguel laughed too. "Of course we can, we're Spider-Men." Ha 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 ha. They both laughed simultaneously. After the laughter subsided, British Spider-Man asked, "Miguel, you've met many Spider-Men. Have you ever seen a Spider-Man as powerful and special as the Wizard Spider-Man?" Miguel countered, "Are you asking me if the Wizard Spider-Man is Spider-Man?" British Spider-Man remained silent, only nodding. Watching Russell frolicking with the Spider-Men, Miguel affirmed, "Of course he's Spider-Man. Although he hasn't been bitten by radioactive spiders, can't stick to walls, and doesn't have spider sense. He's still Spider-Man." As he spoke, Miguel chuckled to himself. This was Miguel's defense when Russell, during their first meeting, contradicted Miguel by saying he wasn't Spider-Man. Chapter 94 Russell's ancient version of the Trinity. After the commotion, Russell and his friends, along with the Spider-Men of the Spider League, went their separate ways. They all had things to do. The Spider-Men needed to hunt down the final successor, Khan. Russell and his friends, however, needed to prepare for the resurrection. Tony Stark was in charge of testing and experimenting with cloning technology. The Ancient One was to retrieve the souls of Wanda and Pietro's parents. Russell was to retrieve Helen's soul. Earth 65, New York, George's house. Russell, Gwen, and George were all in the living room. George looked at Russell with a hint of resentment. Although he had already accepted Russell as his son-in-law and was mentally prepared, last time, this boar had taken his daughter out and hadn't returned for 5 whole days. 5 whole days. Noticing George's gaze, Gwen nudged Russell in annoyance. Russell smiled awkwardly. However, he wasn't worried. He was confident that one sentence would make George forget about it. "I found a way to bring Helen back to life." Russell's extremely calm statement stunned George. George's expression instantly turned astonished and incredulous. "Bring Helen back to life?" Russell nodded, his tone certain. "Yes, bring Helen back to life." Hearing Russell's affirmation, George was at a loss. Since Helen's death, he had devoted himself entirely to his work at the police station. He hoped to fill the emptiness in his heart and forget the pain of losing Helen with his tireless work. For so many years, he had refused to confront Helen's death. As a result, he had struggled to manage his relationship with his daughter, Gwen. Now, with the disguise of work torn away, George was no longer a police chief, but a husband who had lost his wife. He began to panic, become vulnerable, and feel lost. Suddenly, George pinched himself hard to make sure he was not dreaming. Russell waited quietly for George to calm down before speaking again. "I need Helen's belongings to cast a spell to locate her soul." "All right, come with me." George rose, his steps unsteady, and walked towards the bedroom. George's bedroom was sparsely furnished, containing almost nothing but a bed, a table, and a chair. George reached the bed and climbed down. From under the bed, he pulled out a box. A thin layer of dust covered the box, suggesting it had been opened recently and then sealed again. The box opened, revealing its contents, neatly arranged and categorized. "Russell, look. What do we need?" George asked, his voice strained, barely able to control his body. Russell's gaze was drawn to 2 rings in 2 glass boxes. "These must be George and Helen's wedding rings, right? Wait, where have I seen this style before?" Russell quickly searched his memory and remembered. It was George from Earth 404. He wore the same style of ring. Pointing to the ring, Russell said, "This one will do." "Okay." George slowly took the ring out of the box and handed it to Russell. Pointing to the ring, he instructed, "This one is mine, and this one is Helen's." Russell's divine power flowed, forming mysterious runes. He took the ring and placed it inside. Instantly, his divine power was drawn, traversing the void and heading towards an unknown dimension. Russell focused his mind, closely following this wisp of divine power. Although there was no concept of space-time in the super-vortex outside the real universe, the distance this wisp of divine power traversed and the time it took far exceeded Russell's expectations. After an unknown amount of time, this wisp of divine power, guided by the current, arrived at the location of a soul in a crimson dimension. This soul was Helen. At this moment, she was drifting aimlessly in the river Styx. The faint crimson energy permeating the air of this dimension was very familiar to Russell. This was Mephisto's hellish energy. This hell was where Mephisto resided. Why had Helen's soul gone there? Against a typical Hell Lord, Russell could easily fight his way in and out 7 times on his own. Demanding a soul would be a piece of cake. Even against Mephisto, on his home turf, Russell could do the same. But protecting Helen's soul would be difficult. With a puzzled look, Russell slowly opened his eyes. "Did you find it?" George and Gwen asked simultaneously upon seeing Russell open his eyes. "Found it," Russell didn't disappoint, giving an affirmative answer. With a thought, a portal appeared. Destination, Earth 65, Kamartaj. Russell stepped inside, gesturing for George and Gwen to follow. "George, Gwen, come with me." Although he could have George and Gwen stay home and wait for him to bring Helen's soul back, Russell knew the feeling. Every second felt incredibly long and unbearable. "Russell, you're here. I was just about to look for you." Seeing Russell arrive, the Ancient One greeted him first. Russell glanced at Wanda and Pietro, the siblings beside the Whitebird Ancient One. He immediately understood why the Whitebird Ancient One had sought him out. "Sorcerer, are you also going to Mephisto's?" "You too?" the Whitebird Ancient One asked. Russell nodded. "That shouldn't be the case," the Whitebird Ancient One muttered to himself. "Helen is the soul of this universe. How could she go to Mephisto's hell?" Russell interrupted the Whitebird Ancient One's thoughts. "Sorcerer, we'll talk about that later. Let's get down to business first." "Alright." The Whitebird Ancient One rose from his chair, exchanging a smile with Russell. Since they were going to cause trouble for Mephisto, they naturally needed to recruit another person. The Whitebird Ancient One drew a circle with his finger, magical sparks flickered, and a portal appeared. Destination, Earth 404, Kamartaj. The Whitebird Ancient One took the lead, passing through the portal. Russell gestured to the others. "Follow me." George followed somewhat bewilderedly. From the moment he entered the first portal, he had been somewhat confused about what was happening next. Earth 404, Kamartaj, the Ancient One's sanctuary. The bald Ancient One had just finished her tea party. She held this tea party every afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp. On one hand, it was to promote Russell's deeds and pave the way for his succession as Sorcerer Supreme. On the other hand, it was to enjoy her early retirement. She had toiled for centuries, shouldn't she be able to enjoy herself? Tap tap tap, footsteps approached, followed by a crowd surging into her tea room. Ancient One, the white-bearded sorcerer and the bald Ancient One greeted each other first. Upon meeting, without a word, the bald sorcerer understood everything. "So, we're going to Mephisto's hell together. To demand the souls of Wanda, Pietro's parents, and Helen," the white-bearded Ancient One and Russell nodded. The three smiled at each other, recalling that day in the quantum realm. Chapter 95 Mephisto, Settle the Interest. In the fiery hell, in Mephisto's palace, a musical is unfolding. The play is titled Fear Itself. Mephisto is both the playwright and the lead actor. At this moment, there is only one audience member, Mephisto himself. Leaning back on his throne, Mephisto watches the performance below, lost in thought. He is reminiscing about his past glories. In the Fear Itself incident, he single-handedly instigated numerous hellish lords and gods to fight amongst themselves. Ultimately, he profited and ascended to the throne of Satan. Unfortunately, his good fortune was short-lived. Sigh, Mephisto sighed deeply. After falling from Satan, he suffered another defeat on Earth 404. He was extorted for 2 billion units of energy. Truly, misfortune never comes singly. However, in Mephisto's perception, his energy was not absorbed but stored somewhere on Earth 404. He still has a chance to reclaim this energy. And he has already devised a plan. I wonder how Van Dyne's operation is progressing. We need to find Agatha to move on to the next step of the plan. Damn it, if I hadn't been so badly injured, Agatha wouldn't have been able to cut off our communication and escape. Enraged, Mephisto slammed his fist on the throne. The demons performing below, thinking Mephisto was dissatisfied with their performance, trembled involuntarily. In the fiery hell, On the river Styx. While Mephisto was singing and dancing, Russell and his group quietly infiltrated his hell dimension. Is this hell? The final resting place for souls. Looking at the countless souls floating aimlessly in the river Styx, Gwen, Wanda, George, and Pietro murmured, their voices filled with sorrow. The bald Ancient One comforted them. This is already quite good. For these souls, it's just a long sleep, they nodded silently. In this world filled with countless gods and demons, if death is merely a long sleep, then it is indeed a blessing. After calming the group down, the bald-headed Ancient One signaled to Russell to retrieve the souls of Helen and Wanda's parents from the river Styx. Russell, you do it. Be careful, use your elemental energy, don't disturb the spirits here. Russell nodded, releasing his elemental energy. Carefully avoiding the other spirits, he retrieved the souls of Helen and Wanda's parents from the river Styx. Even with Russell's extreme caution, ripples still spread across the river Styx. These ripples were sensed by Mephisto in the palace. Who is it? Where did this thief come from, daring to steal souls from the river Styx of the great demon king, the Lord of Hell, the supreme demon king Mephisto? As Mephisto's voice echoed, the hellfire on the banks of the river Styx surged, sealing off the surrounding space-time. Amidst the endless flames, Mephisto, with his troupe of dancers, teleported to the scene in an instant. Further away, countless demons of hell were also startled by the commotion, turning their gazes in the direction of the commotion. Whoosh! The moment Mephisto appeared, 3 gazes fell upon him. The gazes belonged to Russell, the white-bearded Ancient One, and the bald Ancient One. Simultaneously, Mephisto's gaze swept over the 3 in turn. A silent standoff ensued, tensions rising. Who are these 3? They dare face the king without fear. Whoever they are, they're doomed. That's hard to say. They dared to steal from the river Styx. They must have some backing. That's not certain. You don't know. Some humans are incredibly bold. In the distance, the demons observing this scene discussed amongst themselves. Although their opinions differed, they generally believed that Mephisto would unleash his power and defend the dignity of the Lord of Hell. HMPH, Mephisto snorted coldly. Crimson energy swept across the sky, engulfing Russell and his companions. Mephisto's figure flashed, carrying endless hellfire, and he plunged into the crimson energy. The next instant, the hellfire ignited crimson energy, turning it into a sea of fire. A domain of flames. It's the king's domain of flames, the demons exclaimed. They never expected the king to unleash such a powerful attack right from the start. Looks like these thieves are quite capable, managing to force the king to use a domain of flames. But they'll probably be reduced to ashes soon, not even their souls left. So pathetic. Why did they have to provoke the king? In the demons' minds, Russell and his companions were already condemned to death. However, the situation within the Sea of Flames was completely different from what they expected. After using the Sea of Flames to block his subordinates' senses, Mephisto, his face dark, questioned, "What are you doing in my hell? Had his plan been discovered?" Russell smiled, "Old Mephisto, you don't mind if I take a few souls, do you?" "I mind. I mind very much," Mephisto said coldly. At the same time, he breathed a sigh of relief. "It seems they haven't discovered my plan. Just come in and take a few souls, the last transaction is over. If you want to take souls from me, you need to pay a price." "A price? If there's a price, why did Russell, the white-bird Ancient One, and the bald Ancient One all come together?" "Old Mephisto, that's not right of you. The last transaction, from the moment it was agreed upon to the time you paid the energy, took approximately 4 days, in real-world time. Shouldn't you settle the interest for those 4 days?" Mephisto remained silent. He had never seen such a shameless person. "This is my hell. It's not a place you can come and go as you please." Mephisto spoke harshly, but his actions betrayed him. The surrounding hellfire showed no sign of approaching Russell and the others. Russell, the white-bird Ancient One, and the bald Ancient One didn't speak. They simply took a step forward. Then another. Hell's authority to contain souls comes from death. You arbitrarily reverse life and death. Aren't you afraid I'll complain to death? Mephisto said sharply. He really didn't want to fight Russell and the others at this time. It wouldn't be worth it. But if he let them leave directly, what if they came back later? One step back, and you're back for everything. The white-bearded Ancient One chuckled lightly, pointing to himself. "I'm with eternity." Saying that, he took another step forward. Russell and the bald Ancient One followed in perfect unison. Facing the 3 of them pressing forward, Mephisto's expression kept changing. Finally, he snorted coldly and released the space-time confinement around him. Consider this interest, and don't let it happen again. Get lost. The three of them didn't mind Mephisto's nonsense. A portal appeared, taking the others away. The moment the portal closed, the demons cheered from the other side. Look, those people really did have their souls burned to ashes. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Tony, go, become the Sorcerer Supreme. Back at the Kamar-Taj tea room, the two Ancient Ones left first to brew tea for the group. George, Gwen, Wanda, and Pietro were still in shock, unable to recover for a long time. Mephisto had just arrived with overwhelming demonic flames, his aura menacing. They thought a fight was about to break out. They never expected it to unfold like this. A short while later, the two Ancient Ones returned together. The white-bearded Ancient One held a teacup, while the bald Ancient One carried the tea. One handed over the cup, the other poured the tea. The group took the tea, drank a few sips, and gradually calmed down. Although a fight hadn't broken out, Mephisto's infernal fire was still quite frightening. After calming down, they all turned their expectant gazes to Russell, their eyes revealing barely suppressed excitement. Russell didn't waste any words, opening the mirror dimension and releasing the souls of Wanda's parents and Helen. However, the scene was different from the reunion of their loved ones that they had hoped for. Wanda's parents, Helen's soul, stood motionless, their eyes vacant, seemingly devoid of consciousness. Seeing their gazes shift from anticipation to disappointment and worry, Russell explained, Helen, Oleg, and Irina's, Wanda's parents, souls have been separated from their bodies for too long. Coupled with the environment of hell, they were corrupted by magical energy, which is why they are like this. Once the hell energy's corruption is gradually removed and they are nurtured with gentle energy for a period of time, they will recover. With that, Russell returned Oleg and Irina's souls to Wanda and her brother. Wanda, Pietro, you are both mature sorcerers now, you should know what to do, right? Wanda and Pietro carefully received their parents' souls and enveloped them with their spiritual power. We understand. But how long will it take for Mr. Stark to conduct the cloning experiment? Wanda and Pietro were impatient to resurrect their parents. Why don't you call him and ask? Russell sighed helplessly. He wasn't a know-it-all. How could he know when Tony would be ready for the cloning experiment? Pietro immediately pulled out his phone and dialed Tony's number. Then, Tony complained, come on, we've only been back from Earth 001 for less than half a day. The project team hasn't even finished reviewing the data in half a day, Pietro said awkwardly. So, how long will it take before we can start the cloning experiment? We brought back all the equipment. Theoretically, we can start the experiment now. After a moment of silence, Tony continued, however, the heir's technology is only applicable to their family members in many ways. Modifying it to suit ordinary people will take a long time. How long? Pietro pressed. I don't know, even with Jarvis's assistance, it will take at least 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years? Pietro and Wanda exchanged a glance. Acceptable. George and Gwen exchanged a glance. Acceptable. Russell, is there a way to speed things up? Pietro, Wanda, George, and Gwen can accept it because their loved ones have been gone for years, so 3 to 5 years won't make a difference. But Russell can't accept it. Matt is still young. A month or two is fine, but 3 to 5 years? How will he explain this to Matt? Tony hung up the phone. The next second, a golden spark flashed, and Tony stepped out of the portal. In the experiment, embryo cultivation requires a lot of time. If we can use the time stone to accelerate it, we can shorten the time required for this part. It can probably be reduced by 1 or 2 years. After saying that, Tony glanced at Russell. But in that case, Russell, you will need to stay in the lab to cooperate. Russell shook his head. He didn't want to spend several years working in the lab. There is another way. Tony, do you think it's okay? Since the scientific side would take a long time, Russell decided to use a cheat code. Russell stretched out his hand, palm up, and condensed a ball of attribute point energy. The problem now is that some parts of the cloned body are not compatible with the soul of an ordinary person. What if I make some adaptive adjustments to this body and soul? Tony asked. Is this the energy you use to nurture Hope's soul? What other use does it have? He remembered that Russell had given Natasha this kind of energy to nurture Hope's soul in the quantum realm. The effect seemed much better than when he used his mental power to nurture his parents' souls. Yes, Russell nodded and explained. The characteristic of this energy is to enhance the body and soul, causing them to adaptively evolve in the optimal direction. Tony looked at the attribute point energy in Russell's hand, half believing, half doubting. There's such a magical energy? I've never heard of it. But, in that case, it's worth a try. After saying that, he reached out, gesturing for Russell to give him some to take back and study. Russell didn't hesitate and immediately transferred a huge sum of money to Tony. Attribute point energy worth 10 years of his lifespan. Tony put away the energy, but didn't put away his hand. Russell grumbled, "Tony, what do you mean? The energy I gave you is more than enough for my experiments." Tony remained unfazed. "I understand cloning technology, but you do." Seeing Tony's expression, Russell understood. He wanted to keep some of the energy for himself. After all, Tony was over 40. Coupled with his daily all-night research on suits and spells, he was bound to be struggling. "Tony, if you need this energy to improve your body, just tell me. I won't laugh at you." With a flick of his wrist, Russell produced another huge sum of money, attribute points worth 5,000 years of lifespan. Seeing this energy, Tony's gaze towards Russell changed. "Wow, you're so rich. You only gave me this much?" Russell explained, "Tony, absorb this energy slowly. It should last a long time. Based on the absorption efficiency, it should increase your physique several dozen times, and your mental strength will also be greatly enhanced. As for the remaining energy, it will be converted into lifespan, which should add 3,000 or 4,000 years." Hearing Russell's words, Tony's expression changed several times. He trusted Russell. He had witnessed Russell's physical strength and mental power. However, here it comes, Tony thought to himself. Usually, such good things come with a but. However, for everything related to magic, the source determines everything. You should understand that, Tony, right? Is the source of this energy you, Russell? Tony asked. Yes, Russell nodded. Tony didn't hesitate and took the energy from Russell's hand. What's there to hesitate about? Russell, name your price. A mage, borrowing from whom doesn't matter, right? A superhuman physique, thousands of years of lifespan, and no side effects. Other sources of magic aren't this generous. That's very mage-like. Russell grinned. Tony, I'll give you a discount. Twice the other magical energy. Tony's expression shifted slightly. This was a genuine, unbiased discount. There are differences between different types of energy. For sorcerers, what often limits their cultivation isn't the amount of energy, but their own capacity to withstand it. And what can extend lifespan and improve physical constitution is generally dark magic, with very serious side effects. Well, it's not that white magic can't do it. It's that the founder of white magic, the Vishanti, forbade it. The Vishanti passed down white magic with the intention that sorcerers would use it to combat dark magic and protect the real world from magical invasion, not to make sorcerers the source of chaos in the real world. Tony asked suspiciously, isn't there any other price? Other price? Russell pretended to think, then said, how about, Tony, after you become the Sorcerer Supreme, you protect me. Yes, the key is becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. The bald Ancient One couldn't help but laugh at this scene. To persuade Russell to agree to succeed as the Sorcerer Supreme, she promised most of her fortune, a total of billions of various types of energy. And now, Russell was offering 5,000 units of energy to try and trick Tony into becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. However, scarcity increases value. Ignoring the possibility of Russell turning against them, Russell's attribute energy is indeed more valuable than most other energies. Tony, becoming the Sorcerer Supreme is the best reward for Russell. Tony looked at the bald Ancient One with a puzzled expression. Ancient One, didn't you want Russell to succeed as the Sorcerer Supreme? The Ancient One's desire to elevate Russell to the position of Sorcerer Supreme was common knowledge in Kamartaj. However, Russell's performance had indeed been quite formidable, which was why the other sorcerers had no objections. The Ancient One explained with a smile, the Sorcerer Supreme usually refers to the most powerful sorcerer. Either they possess more powerful magical skills than others, or they possess more powerful magical energy than others, or both. Usually, there will only be one, at most two, Sorcerers Supreme in a world. But ultimately, the Sorcerer Supreme title is based on strength, not on empty titles or definitions. As long as you're strong enough to subdue others, it doesn't matter if a world has 3, 4, or even more sorcerers supreme. In the end, it's just an empty title, the white-bearded Ancient One added. However, it's different if you pass the Vishanti trial. A sorcerer supreme who passes the trial can borrow even greater power from the Vishanti. Wanda, who had been listening in, asked in confusion, what's the difference between the two? She was also a candidate for Sorcerer Supreme favored by Russell and was quite interested in this topic. The white-bearded Ancient One stroked his beard, hesitantly saying, different titles? One has the certification of the Vishanti, the other doesn't. The bald Ancient One smiled and explained, don't worry about that. Except for Universe 616, the Sorcerer Supreme in other universes don't need to pass the Vishanti trial. They all earned it themselves. Upon hearing this, the white-bearded Ancient One was displeased. My Sorcerer Supreme title was also earned myself. Only Stevens wasn't. To say something the founder wouldn't like, I am the Supreme Master among all masters. Not the Supreme Master of Vishanti. When I reached 2,000 words, I felt it wouldn't be good to stop there, so I continued writing. Then, when I reached 3,000 words, I felt it still wouldn't be good to stop there. But, it's 7 o'clock, time to update. Chapter 97 Matters Before Resurrection. After the Ancient One's explanation, Wanda understood. I get it. The difference between a Sorcerer Supreme and a Vishanti certified Sorcerer Supreme. One gains recognition through strength. The other gains strength through recognition. And one's own strength is the most important. The Ancient One's expression stiffened, then he nodded meaningfully. Wanda's words reminded him of Russell. Both were a bit reckless. Could they just say such things so casually? Weren't they afraid the Ancient One would hear them and ban them from using white magic? But Russell and Wanda didn't seem to be afraid. Russell used his own pirated magic, which only looked the same as the original. Wanda mainly used chaos magic. Other magic was just supplementary. Tony had a different understanding of the Ancient One's words. Although his magical power accumulation was not yet enough, Tony's understanding of magic was already very profound. In his view, Vishanti certification was equivalent to patent authorization and financial support, spells and energy. If needed, he could research and create his own pirated versions of most spells, just like Russell. As for insufficient energy to use powerful spells, he could compensate for this deficiency with technology. Take, for example, the celestial meteor attack. Ordinary mages simply couldn't achieve that level of destructive power using magic alone. After clarifying these points, Tony took his leave. I'm going back to continue my experiments. I expect to have results in a few days. Gwen, George, Wanda, and Pietro. Thank you, Tony, Mr. Stark. After watching Tony leave through the portal, Wanda looked at Russell. Russell, Wanda asked expectantly and shyly, can my parents also use your special energy? Russell, if possible, she would certainly like to resurrect her parents quickly, instead of waiting 3 to 5 years. But constantly troubling Russell made her feel embarrassed. Of course, Russell readily agreed. Thank you so much, Russell, X2. Wanda and Pietro thanked Russell profusely. After expressing their gratitude, a large ball of crimson energy slowly appeared in Wanda's palm. Russell, this is my reward, chaos energy. Wanda had just overheard Russell offering Tony double the energy. Unsure of her discount, Wanda released all the chaos energy she had awakened. Seeing this, Russell was both amused and exasperated, refusing Wanda. Wanda, take it back. You're not like Tony. Tony's magical energy is absorbed from the outside, it's external. Your chaos magic is innate, a part of your life. Without it, your life will gradually come to an end. But, Wanda hesitated. Unlike Tony, the billionaire and genius scientist, she had nothing else to offer as a reward besides chaos magic. Slightly modifying the words of the Ancient One, Russell used them to persuade Wanda. Wanda, if you can become the Sorcerer Supreme, that would be the best reward for me. Feeling the Ancient One's sudden gaze, Russell thought for a moment and continued, however, Wanda, don't feel pressured. As long as you cultivate diligently, you will grow stronger with the awakening of chaos magic. Tell her what she can do for you now. The Ancient One's voice echoed in Russell's mind. Russell sighed inwardly. Master, there's nothing I need Wanda to do right now, the Ancient One replied. Anything is fine, Wanda, I need your help with something later. I'll trouble you then, Wanda nodded, her voice cheerful. Okay. Russell's fingers traced through the air, golden magical sparks flashing. A portal slowly appeared, leading to the 7th floor of Russell's New York bookstore. George, this is my house in New York. You and Gwen can stay here for now. After Helen is resurrected, go back with her. As he spoke, Russell handed Helen's soul to George. Helen should wake up in a day or two. In her soul form, only you can see her. And she can't touch physical objects. Remember to comfort her then, okay? Thank you, Russell. George excitedly took Helen's soul. He couldn't catch it. Gwen, let me take it, George. Concentrating her spiritual power in her hand, Gwen took Helen's soul. By the way, George, did you ask for leave? Russell suddenly asked. George wasn't like him and Gwen. George was the New York Police Commissioner, a high-ranking official. If he stayed here a few more days, would the police station on Earth 65 consider it absenteeism? George was about to speak when the white-bearded Ancient One spoke first. I can help George ask for leave, I'm going back anyway. Before George could speak, Russell thanked the Ancient One on his behalf. Then I'll leave it to you, Master. By the way, George, do you remember what you looked like when you were young? What did I look like when I was young? George looked at Russell with a puzzled expression, somewhat confused. Russell smiled mysteriously and patted George on the shoulder. The next instant, attribute point energy surged into George's body. Under Russell's powerful mental control, it rapidly strengthened and repaired him. In an instant, hair grew wildly all over George's body. Before long, he became an ape man. PFFT. PFFT. Gwen couldn't help but laugh first. Wanda and Pietro followed suit. Russell also smiled awkwardly. Sorry, George. This is my first time helping someone strengthen someone else. I have no experience. George slowly stretched out his hand. He could feel the energy contained in this body. Even if he were 10 years younger, his body wouldn't be as healthy and strong as it was now. Suddenly, George remembered something. He took out his phone and looked at the off-screen. On the screen was his face when he was young. Russell's voice also sounded at this moment. In this way, when Helen is resurrected, she shouldn't feel unfamiliar when she sees you, George. But I can't help Gwen. I can't exactly turn her back into a child, can I? After explaining to George, Russell began instructing Wanda. Wanda, could you please cast a confusion spell on George? Make everyone else ignore the changes in his appearance. Yes, Russell, Wanda replied. Crimson energy appeared at her fingertips, slowly tracing a path before George's eyes. Mysterious runes flashed and then disappeared. All done, Wanda exclaimed excitedly. To her, it was just a simple little spell. Of course, it was the same for Russell. After Wanda finished helping, Russell took out a small ball of attribute point energy and handed it to her, explaining, no incantation is needed. Just separate it and place it on your parents' souls. Chapter 98 Gwen Wanda's family reunion. Time flew by, and half a month passed in the blink of an eye. That day, Tony informed Russell that the experiment was a success. Accompanied by Russell, the resurrection ceremony officially began. First to appear was Matt Murdock. On one hand, he had absorbed Russell's attribute points for the longest time, making his soul the strongest and more forgiving. On the other hand, if the experiment wasn't conducted soon, he would have to learn the technique of interfering with the real world from the spiritual realm. Russell, should we wait a couple more days? Matt asked, somewhat conflicted. He had been training tirelessly for days, without sleep or food. He was finally close to mastering the technique of interfering with the real world from the spiritual realm. And now, Russell was telling him he could rebuild his body. What was the point of all that hard work? Russell patted Matt on the shoulder and poured out more a bowl of chicken soup for the soul. Matt, that's life. You never know which will come first, tomorrow or a surprise. Matt rolled his eyes, ignoring Russell, and went straight to the nutrient pod. Looking down at his body, Matt asked Tony, what should I do next? Tony replied, just lie down. Don't resist, go with attraction, adjust and adapt slowly. Okay, Matt obediently did as instructed and lay down in the nutrient tank. After the body and soul made extensive contact, beams of shimmering white light appeared. This was the energy from the attribute points in the soul and body taking effect. The shimmering white light slowly but powerfully pulled Matt's body and soul, bridging the dimensions of spirit and reality, gradually merging the two into one. Russell watched the process from the side. If anything went wrong, he would immediately save Matt's soul. Unexpectedly, Matt's soul did not feel any discomfort under the pull of the shimmering white light. On the contrary, it seemed to enjoy it. And, from time to time, it showed an expression of sudden realization. Russell did not understand it all. He could only ask Matt after the experiment was over. And the experiment process was also longer than expected. In the blink of an eye, several hours had passed. "Tony, how much longer?" Tony glanced at the control panel and said casually, "Look at the progress bar, another 10 days, I guess." Russell asked doubtfully, "Why so long?" "Tony, your previous experiments, all added up, didn't even take 10 days, Tony countered. "Are humans and lab rats the same?" Russell asked. "Was Matt the first human subject?" Tony nodded. "Isn't that what you were doing?" Russell fell silent. "Poor Matt, I can hear you." Matt's voice suddenly rang out in the mental world. Russell and Tony exchanged a glance. They both chose to change the subject. "Russell, Tony, do you have a way to calibrate time in different worlds and dimensions?" The difference in the flow of time in different worlds was Russell's biggest hidden danger in traveling through the multiverse, troubling him for a long time. Now, it was a good opportunity to change the subject. Unexpectedly, Tony gave an affirmative answer. "Yes. I've been thinking of a way ever since I accidentally entered the quantum realm last time. We need to find a reference time coordinate to calibrate the flow of time in different worlds." Tony then frowned and explained, "However, there's a problem. We can only know the ratio of our current time flow to standard time. We can't know the ratio of other locations to standard time across universes. Therefore, when traveling to other universes, we can only roughly estimate the time in our original universe, not get an accurate figure." Russell pondered for a moment and offered a suggestion. Perhaps you could ask the Spider Alliance. They are an interdimensional organization, maybe they can help." Technically, he couldn't help. But he had connections. Tony thought for a moment and nodded. "Okay, after I finish this, I'll contact Miguel." The long 10 days finally passed. Everything went very smoothly. Matt's soul merged perfectly with his body. It was as if it were brand new. Including Matt's eyes. Aaron reached out and waved in front of Matt's eyes, noticing that Matt's eyes were unfocused, and asked curiously, "Matt, what's wrong with your eyes? How come you can't see again after your body has been rebuilt?" Matt smiled, satisfied. "Eileen, I didn't say I couldn't see." As he spoke, Matt's eyes regained focus, moving back and forth as Eileen waved her hand. "I feel like I have two perspectives now. One is seeing with my eyes. The other is perceiving with my other senses. It's just a short time, I haven't adapted yet." Matt was indeed very satisfied. His superhuman senses hadn't been lost after his vision returned, in fact, they had become stronger. "Matt, is there anything wrong with your body?" Wanda asked with concern. If Matt's body was unaffected, then her parents' experiment could begin. Sensing Wanda's concern, Matt reassured her, "The experiment was a success, I feel fine." There were no adverse reactions during the experiment. After hearing Matt's words, Wanda looked expectantly at Russell and Tony. Oleg and Irina, on the other hand, comforted their daughter, who seemed to have suddenly grown 10 years older, yet also seemed not to have grown up at all. "Wanda, don't worry. We're already content to see you and Pietro again." As parents, they felt more heartache for their children than joy at regaining their bodies. A pair of 10-year-old twins, in the chaotic environment of Sokovia. It must have been incredibly difficult for them to survive and thrive. Meeting the expectant eyes of Wanda, Pietro, Gwen, and George, Russell gave a reassuring reply. "Let's begin the experiment." He then looked at Tony. He was merely providing backup. Tony was the one who had actually arranged the experiment. "Since there are no problems, let's all come together." Tony nodded and pointed to the 3 nutrient pods. "Lie down, you don't need to do anything, just treat it like a nap." Helen, Oleg, and Irina entered their respective nutrient pods. Next, just like Matt, a shimmering white light appeared, drawing their souls and bodies together. The only difference was, Matt, as an apprentice sorcerer, was able to comprehend the secrets and connection between the soul and body during this process, thus enhancing his magical knowledge. Helen, Oleg, and Irina, on the other hand, quickly fell into a drowsy state, as if in a beautiful dream. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. 10 days later, when Helen, Oleg, and Irina awoke, they had been placed in 2 separate rooms. One room was for Wanda and Pietro's family, the other for George, Helen, and Gwen's family. After a decade or more, these 2 families were reunited. Chapter 99 News of Thanos. Several days had passed since Helen's body was reconstructed. Helen was now completely familiar with her new body. More than a month had passed since George left Earth 65. But George said he had plenty of vacation time. So, George and Helen remained on Earth 404, living a happy life as a family of 3+1. As for why they didn't return to Earth 65, it was because Gwen had decided to move to Earth 404 to attend university. She, Wanda, and Pietro became classmates. Her enrollment method was through Stark Industries. That evening, on the 7th floor of the bookstore, George's family and Russell were having dinner together. The dinner was sumptuous. Among them was a lemon sea-based dish that Helen had made herself. Russell, here, thank you, Helen. Russell took the plate from the smiling Helen and thanked her. Then he cut open the sea base and savored it. Helen's soul awakened, and after learning about what happened after her death and the relationship between Russell and Gwen, she scolded George, complaining that he lacked manners. She then said she would make this dish to make up for Russell's lack of manners. Russell looked it up online. In America, this dish is basically a must-have for a son-in-law or daughter-in-law's first visit, representing the family's acceptance of them. Seeing Russell enjoying his meal so much, George, not to be outdone, quickly started eating too. He hadn't eaten Helen's cooking in a long time. For a moment, at the dinner table, Russell and George were engrossed in their food, almost as if in a competition. Helen and Gwen, on the other hand, sat together, chatting about everyday things while eating. However, the mother and daughter looked more like sisters. Wanda and Pietro's side wasn't so warm. Although it was almost evening, the two siblings were still in tutoring. The tutors were all hired by Tony at high prices. Each one was highly professional. Tony had discussed this with them after Oleg and Irina were resurrected. Oleg and Irina agreed to fund tutoring for Wanda and Pietro, filling the educational gaps in their lives, after learning about their recent situation. Russell also offered a suggestion: have them open a beverage shop next to the bookstore to help them reintegrate into society quickly. 4 cups of mango pomelo sago, less ice, less sugar. By the way, Irina, haven't Wanda and Pietro finished their studies yet? Oh, Russell. Irina greeted Russell while operating the machine to make milk tea. Wanda and Pietro still have some homework to finish. Once they've finished, I'll remind them to go to Kamartaj to learn magic. That's right. Besides daily science lessons, Wanda and Pietro also need to travel to Kamartaj to learn magic. I was thinking, maybe we should give them more rest time. Their lifespans are much longer than ordinary people. There's no need to rush. Russell hesitated for a moment before explaining. Although he really wanted his Sorcerer Supreme member, Ms. Wanda, to grow quickly, how many hours had she been studying all day? Russell wasn't a heartless capitalist like Tony. Irina smiled awkwardly and handed Russell the 4 cups of mango pomelo sago she had prepared. She also realized that she seemed to be pushing Wanda and Pietro too hard. Okay, then I'll do as you say, Russell. Let them rest after class. Russell smiled and accepted the milk tea. He wasn't bothered by Wanda's absence from today's magical practice. In Russell's perception, since Wanda's parents were resurrected, Wanda's awakening speed of chaos magic had increased significantly. It was clear that tragedy wasn't the only thing that could unleash Wanda's potential, comedy could too. Russell said goodbye to Irina and was about to return to the bookstore. Suddenly, a rainbow of light flashed in the distance. This was the Rainbow Bridge. In that direction were Thor and Loki. Magical sparks flickered, and a portal opened. Russell placed the 3 cups of milk tea back in the living room and greeted George and the others. I'm going out for a bit, don't wait for me. With that, he took a step and disappeared from the bookstore entrance, arriving at the top floor of a hotel. The Hilton Hotel in Manhattan's East Side. When Russell arrived, several people were already waiting there: Thor, Loki, Sif, and the Warriors 3 of Asgard. Thor, dressed in a suit and tie, smiled and asked, Sif, you came to see us. What's the matter? Sif, clad in armor, glanced at Thor's attire, a glint of surprise in her eyes. She sensed that the eldest prince of Asgard seemed much gentler after removing his armor. Yes, something's up, but not about you or Loki, it's about the mage Russell. Russell commissioned Heimdall to find news of Thanos, the leader of the Dark Order. Heimdall found him, but he can't contact Russell. So he asked us to come to Midgard to relay his message. Sif then bowed in Russell's direction. Mr. Russell, Asgard has received news. Thanos is collaborating with Ronan, the commander of the Kree army, to obtain the orb. His adopted daughters Gamora and Nebula have both appeared by Ronan's side. And the orb is on Morag. By keeping watch on Morag, we can find either Ronan's or Thanos' two adopted daughters. Then, through them, we can find Thanos. However, Asgard is not in a position to take action against these two forces. Please forgive me, Master Russell. Russell finished his milk tea in one gulp, nodded and said, I understand. Asgard is a large and powerful nation, and cannot afford to make enemies indiscriminately. But, could you arrange a guide for me? Although Russell could easily travel through the multiverse and cross from one end of the universe to the other, it didn't prevent him from being directionally challenged. He had never been to Morag. Loki, also dressed in a suit, had a glint in his eyes. The opportunity to get close to Master Russell had arrived. Loki knew that Odin's true purpose in sending him to Midgard with Thor was to cultivate a good relationship with Kamartaj and bring the two forces closer. Among these, winning over Russell was crucial. Russell, I will be your guide. Loki stepped forward and confidently explained to the crowd, other Asgardians might be recognized, but I won't. I can transform into the appearance of people from other planets. As he spoke, Loki moved with incredible speed, shifting between Kree, Skrull, and Sheer to prove his words were true. Well done, Loki. You're truly my brother. Thor gave Loki a sharp pat on the shoulder. This task is yours. Loki looked at Thor, a question mark slowly forming on his face. How did this become a task you gave me? Chapter 100 Heading to Morag. Loki, you want to be my guide. Russell thought for a moment and readily agreed. All right. Then I'll trouble you, Loki. By the way, Loki, have you ever been to Morag? Can we use a portal spell to get there directly? Hearing Russell's agreement, Loki's lips curled into a smile. But upon hearing Russell's next two questions, Loki's smile froze. Clearly, he hadn't been to Morag. We can have Heimdall use the Bifrost to send us there. No, Sif retorted to Loki. Using the Bifrost will leave a trace. Russell walked over and patted Loki on the shoulder, saying earnestly, Loki, the important task of getting to Morag is entrusted to you. Once you get to Morag, use the portal to come back to me and take me there. Loki's face darkened as he looked at Russell. Russell returned an innocent smile. Loki, exasperated, explained to Sif, I think we can have Heimdall use the Bifrost to send me and the spaceship to the vicinity of Morag. Then, I'll fly the spaceship over. Russell didn't care how Loki got to Morag. He just didn't want to waste time on the spaceship. Okay. I'll wait for your message, Loki. With that, Russell handed Loki a pager. If you encounter danger, press this pager, and I'll teleport you to rescue you. Thor also cautioned, little brother, be careful. Loki nodded listlessly. As long as he wasn't with Thor, he didn't think he'd be in danger. However, Loki still carefully put away Russell's pager. Whether he'd encounter danger was one thing, being prepared was another. Heimdall, Loki shouted towards the sky. He knew Heimdall was watching. Send me and a spaceship to the vicinity of Morag. Boom, a rainbow of light pierced through the void, descending from the sky. The next instant, Loki vanished, speeding away along the rainbow bridge into the distance. I'm going back now, there are people waiting for me at home. Russell greeted Thor and the others. Magical sparks flickered, and with a single step, he passed through the portal and returned to the bookstore. As Russell passed through the portal, sparks scattered and dissipated, like cherry blossoms slowly falling. Back at the bookstore, George and Helen watched Russell emerge from the portal, filled with astonishment. Although it wasn't the first time they had seen Russell use portal magic, each time it had greatly impressed them. It was so beautiful. Are you done with your work, Russell? Gwen asked. Not yet. Russell walked to the sofa and sat down with Gwen and the others to watch TV. I had Loki fly over in his ship first to confirm the coordinates. Then I'll use the portal to get there. Gwen and the others looked at Russell with confusion. To them, Russell's explanation was essentially the same as no explanation at all. Russell suddenly realized he hadn't mentioned Thanos to them before. So, he slightly modified his words and began to explain. In this universe, there is a man named Thanos. His goal is to eliminate half of all life in the universe to maintain a balance between life and resources. And to achieve this goal, he is collecting the Infinity Stones. 2 of them are on Earth, and he will come to Earth sooner or later. I asked the Asgardians to help me find him, intending to confront him in advance. Won't that be dangerous? Gwen asked worriedly. The thought of someone aiming to eliminate half of all life in the universe was terrifying. Dangerous? Don't worry, Gwen. I never do anything I'm not sure of. If there's real danger, my sense of danger will kick in. Just like your spider sense, it reacts to attacks, Russell patiently explained. Besides, Thanos himself is mediocre, he can't defeat me. Even the comic book version of Thanos, if he's unarmed, can't hurt Russell. Russell is just outwardly reckless, he's actually very steady. Before his stats reach the third stage, Russell could still sense danger from the two ancient ones. Back then, he was quite obedient. Only after his stats were upgraded and the third stage was maxed out, and he no longer sensed any danger from Whitebird or the Ancient One, did Russell slowly start causing trouble. And essentially, Russell is a tank. A tank with extremely high physical and magical resistance, almost immune. His defense far exceeds his attack. It's just that he's always been in one-sided matches, which gives others the illusion that he's a mage, a warrior. Hearing Russell's explanation, Gwen finally relaxed. George and Helen, who had been listening intently to Gwen and Russell's conversation, also relaxed. In their simple understanding, Russell could freely traverse the multiverse, while Thanos was confined to the universe. Clearly, Russell, Thanos. Meanwhile, Loki first used the Bifrost to teleport, then traveled alone in his spaceship for several days, finally arriving at Morag. However, Loki was thinking about the manor he owned in New York, a gift from an unknown person. He drew a circle with his finger. A magical spark flickered and then disappeared. He drew another circle. The magical spark flickered again and then disappeared. The portal, however, failed to materialize. Damn it, Loki cursed inwardly, taking out the pager Russell had given him. After a moment's thought, he put it away. This was for emergencies, not for casual use. Loki understood the lesson of the boy who cried wolf, Heimdall. Tell Russell I've arrived on Morag. Tell him to locate me and teleport here, Loki roared towards the sky. Although there was no response, he believed Heimdall had heard him. A few minutes later, Loki knew he was right. With a flash of magical sparks, Russell emerged from the portal. Loki, thank you for your hard work. You saved me 4 days, Loki smiled and replied politely, it's nothing, Russell. Let's go down. Having said that, Loki piloted the spaceship, descending towards Morag. Morag had been abandoned for many years, and few traces of human activity remained. Coupled with a damaged atmosphere and severe water vapor loss, the entire planet's surface was a desolate wasteland. The terrain was uneven, with jagged rocks and bottomless fissures everywhere. Loki maneuvered the spaceship, pausing in midair for a few seconds. Finally, he chose a direction and slowly moved, landing on a relatively flat area. Directly in front of the spaceship was a dilapidated palace. Over time, the palace had weathered beyond recognition. However, through the massive, broken stone statues, glimpses of its former glory could still be seen. This was no ordinary palace, it was a temple. According to the intelligence we've gathered, the cosmic orb is located within a temple, Loki explained, pointing to the palace ahead. Russell, let's start our search from here. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all, see you in the next video.